Good evening, everyone. This is the Board of School Directors meeting for the Boyertown Area School District on July 28th, 2020. This is a voting meeting. For those who may have signed up to speak, if you're using a phone, please remember that *6 is for mute and unmute once you're allowed into the session to speak, and *9 is the raise the hand feature, which once your time is up, you will not be able to and need that feature. So *6, if you're on the phone, is for mute and unmute once you are invited into the session if you're calling on a phone. Additionally, I'd like to announce that this meeting was intended to be a hybrid meeting originally with the board members in person at the Ed Center. As many of you know in the community, we have had internet breakdown, connection problems the past day and a half because we had a firewall that went down. That firewall was already scheduled to be replaced, kind of like a roof when you have an anticipated life expectancy, but it obviously crashed sooner than the team had anticipated, and so they had to expedite the installation of the new firewall. But because they got it up and running today, we wanted to still make sure, though, that all the systems are operating, allow our IT department, for lack of a better term, to make sure the firewall was syncing with all of the other systems within our district and not have to rush for this meeting. And so out of abundance of caution, we wanted to make sure that we were able to function and continue with this meeting without any interruptions. I do also want to take this opportunity to answer some questions from people who have submitted about previous meetings. The plan had been all along that when the district had gone to green to start having hybrid meetings, the first meeting was originally going to be scheduled on July 14th, but as IT and facilities worked through the process in our Ed Center to try to make sure that they had appropriate social mitigation and technology support that would avoid feedback, because we did not want to limit public participation in that process, which would have included us still broadcasting both Zoom and Facebook Live. There were some other processes they needed to go through to make it work. So the 14th was tabled, and as you know, we participated live on the 21st, and then here we are today. So the district had intended to actually go live with a hybrid format with board members only, actually starting the first meeting on July 14th, but needed to work through to make sure that we were all still in a place where we were able to do social distancing, as well as the technology working to still be inclusive of the audience that could not attend or would not be allowed to attend in person. With that said, Mr. President, I'll turn it over to you and the board secretary.
All right, thank you for that. So we will call our meeting to order, and we'll begin with a roll call.
Okay, the new voting rotation starts this evening. So we'll start with Mrs. Deeroff. Here. Mrs. Hogan.
Present.
Mrs. Denon. Here. Mr. Brophy.
Here.
Ms. Nyman. Ms. Nyman, I believe you're muted. We'll go on to Mrs. McWhirter.
Here.
Mr. Updegrove. Dr. Benton, I believe Mr. Updegrove is on the attendee side.
And unfortunately, I cannot, because his name does not show, I do not know which person he is. So I can't pull him in because there is no name under Roger Updegrove over there. So either he needs to, the email was sent out again. There was a reminder to look at his email and log in through that, or someone, you can send him yours and then he'll come in on this side. But I've looked and his name is not there. So there's no way for me to tell which one is is him to pull him in.
Okay.
Miss Kincaid, Mrs.
26.
Nyman said she can unmute.
Okay, Dr. Bedden, could you assist with that?
I'll see if it'll allow me. But if you can send him yours and then I can change his name.
I will.
Try it now,
let's-
Mrs. Nyman.
I'm here. It keeps circulating saying waiting, so I can't do anything with mine. It's like I
Okay.
have to hold in or whatever. I don't know.
Now you're here on the screen and it showed, but whenever you need help, I'll try to. Sometimes it allows me to and sometimes it doesn't. This time I could unmute you. So just let us know.
Okay, I'll be in touch with Mr. Updegrove, but in the meantime, Mr. Hemingway,
Here.
Mr. Foose,
Here.
okay.
Or if he sends you his phone number, what he's calling in on that shows up, I can pull that in that way, Miss Kincaid.
Okay, I'll do both.
All right, next, we will move to our Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Great. First, we have announcement of previous executive session. So the board met on June 24th to discuss the superintendent's goals and evaluation, and that was for 45 minutes. Next, we have public comment period number 1, and I know that we do have several people signed up for that, either to have the statement read or to speak themselves. So first, I'm going to read our statement. On behalf of the Boyertown School, on behalf of the Board of School Directors, I would like to welcome you to this meeting. Welcome your attendance and input from stakeholders to assist us with making recommendations and decisions related to the Boyertown Area School District. Procedures and rules for public participation are detailed in BASD Board Policy 006. This document is available at this meeting and on the BASD website. Participants properly registered on the sign-up sheet will be recognized by the presiding officer. Public comment period number 1 is limited to topics on tonight's agenda. Participants must preface their comments by an announcement of their name, address, and group affiliation if that is appropriate. All statements, inquiries, or comments shall be directed to the presiding officer. No participant may address or question board members individually, administrative team members individually, school employees, or members of the public individually. Note that we value and will not compromise the privacy of our students and staff. Please see us outside the realm of a public meeting if you have a concern about an individual staff member or student. If your public comment includes a question, Dr. Bedden or a member of his staff will be in contact with you to confirm your question and provide you with information. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and comment periods are limited to 30 minutes. Individuals may indicate a desire to speak a second time if there is time left in the 30-minute period. Finally, note that we do record our board meetings and committee meetings, and we post them on YouTube with a link on our website. We request that if you do wish to take pictures or record the meeting yourself, you do so in a non-disruptive and discreet manner and use those materials respectfully and responsibly. Thank you. All right, so there are a couple of people who have submitted statements. Mrs. Kincaid, will you be reading those?
Yes, I will. In just a moment, please.
Sure.
I don't see that number, Ms. Kincaid, but I see a Galaxy S9 showing over the hand raised. Is that him?
Dr. Bedden,
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove is not the Galaxy 11. He has an Apple phone.
Okay,
So
the
he's
number-
trying to reconnect as a panelist, but it's not working for him.
Give me 1 second and see if I can resend another one to him.
Well, he said he's on his iPad and he didn't get mine that I sent just a few minutes ago.
Would it be okay while we get that worked out if I move to the people that will be speaking and we can get back to the
Well,
statements?
Mr. Foose, I have the statements right here, so I'm ready. I was just helping Mr. Updegrove.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to give you time to work on that if you wanted to move to the speakers that are present.
Okay. No, I'm good. We can move on to the statements.
All right.
Okay, the first person who signed up is Denise Atkinson. And she says she would like to acknowledge receipt of Ms. Atkinson's questions. Dr. Bedden sent a follow-up to her, but she still wanted the questions read at tonight's meeting. She says, my name is Denise Atkinson from Gilbertsville and a parent of 2. I want to give permission for my comments to be read at the board meeting. I've talked to parents and created Facebook posts that parents in the community have replied to. I am hoping for all of us that the following questions will be answered tonight. For those of us considering an outer cyber school, at what point does our child not get assigned a teacher for the beginning of the year and have to re-enroll in BASD? Can cyber students come back to school at any time during the year, or will the district put a transition plan in place so the classroom is not constantly interrupted? Students with Chapter 15s, 504s, and IEPs might have difficult time handling the disruption. Will cyber students then be reassigned to their home school? For families in the classroom, how is BASD able to assure our child's education will remain consistent if we face a state shutdown? Since BASD Virtual is so new, is there enough time to train all our teachers using this tool to ensure our children's education is not interrupted? Our children should not be guinea pigs to this process. We want to be assured our district has the bandwidth to offer this option, or should we look elsewhere? How is BASD assuring consistency if a student needs to quarantine or stay home for a fever of 100 because of an earache? Is the BASD virtual option available in all classrooms for those at home to log in, or will lessons be recorded for students to watch at a later time? Speaking of potential quarantine, we need clarification. Is it only the person with the virus staying home? Will students with a desk within 6 feet of the person be informed by DOH to quarantine? Do we have enough substitutes or a plan if several teachers in one building must quarantine? Now that we have this BASD virtual option, is it possible for parents of grades K to 6 to choose a hybrid option? Is our district requiring a mask because the desk cannot be 6 feet apart, or are we required to wear a mask at all times regardless? I read that face shields are acceptable, so could that mean we could use the shower curtain and PVC piping idea, or use plexiglass around the desk? To make the students more comfortable with this, can they decorate the perimeters of it or hang a family photo in the corner? I feel we need clarity on this mandate and explore what is acceptable given the guideline of the state. Can BASD show us a video of how things will look in the classroom? Can our students and teachers wear a colored wristband letting the district know a parent or child's comfort level with the recommendations for social distancing? Are the pictures we visualized for this year worse in our minds than in reality? I want my children to have the consistency this year and stay with their friends. My family has formed an irreplaceable bond with the staff and teachers. We all need answers now. For those making decisions tonight, please ask the questions, vote, and convince us that BASD can provide a solid education and a plan to continue to move us all forward in a way that meets most of our needs, whether that is with in-person instruction, BOL, or the BASD version.
Mrs. Kincaid,
Yes,
we have reached 3 minutes on that.
okay. She had one more sentence, but that was really an ending.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go on to comment number 2 from Madeline Caraselli. She's a parent of a high school student residing in Gilbertsville. Dear school board members, I do not understand why parents feel they need to be rude, mean, and just plain hateful to the board and to other parents. This is not what Boyertown is trying to teach our children, so why are they doing the opposite and ignoring the term Boyertown is no place for hate? We will not all agree on whatever the outcome is from the school board with regards to the upcoming school year, but we all need to keep an open mind and be respectful. I totally believe that many of the parents, teachers, and children want some sort of in-person schooling. There are so much more positive effects that going to school offers our children besides education that needs to be considered. The parent voices of the few should not dictate the parent voices of the many just because they are the loudest. That concludes her statement. The next statement is from Amy Chrisman, who is a parent to an 8th and 10th grader who resides in Earl Township. Tonight, as you discuss and ultimately vote for a plan to begin the 2020-2021 school year, I urge you to keep the safety of students at the forefront of your discussions. While I know that parental input is important and safety of students comes first, everything you decide tonight will impact every student, so I urge you to step far away from your personal agendas, personal political beliefs and opinions, and look at what is best for the safety of everyone involved, students, teachers, and staff alike. In addition, should you opt to send students back in any fashion, I urge you to please develop a clearly outlined plan for the expectations for when, and it is when, not if, students are sent home. What if the plan for teaching remotely during times of quarantine, or if we ever return to a red phase and need to shut down the district? We certainly cannot have a repeat of what occurred in the spring. While I am well aware of the limitations that were placed upon teachers and students during this time, the same cannot be said for any virtual teaching that could occur this school year. Do teachers have the necessary tools they need for successful virtual teaching? Is the district willing to make an investment to ensure that all students can receive remote instruction? Has training and professional development been provided? If not, then I request that some of tonight's discussion be devoted to ensuring that our district has a clearly outlined remote learning plan in place. Thank you. And the last statement that I have is from Damian Larkin. He is a resident of New Hanover Township. I applaud the tireless efforts that the administration has undertaken to formulate a reopening plan that addresses the educational, social, emotional, and public health concerns regarding the return of children, teachers, and staff to our schools. These professionals were hired because of their expertise in their respective fields. Allow the experts to be trusted and follow their guidance, as they are the ones with the knowledge to place our children on the best possible path to success in these uncertain and ever-changing times. I believe that they have the best interest of not only the students, but also of the community in mind through this entire process. I support a hybrid scaffolded plan that engages the teachers we know in the classroom with both in-person and online learning, specifically for the elementary schools. This would allow a rotating schedule to minimize physical class sizes, minimize transportation impacts, and ease cleaning issues within facilities. Additionally, I ask that the administration provide a BASD based virtual learning option to allow students to continue their education with BASD staff. This would allow families to choose a fully virtual learning environment without burdening the district with the financial impact of choosing a separate cyber charter school. If many families choose a non-BOL cyber charter education, it has the potential to severely affect the quality of education available within the district and further deepen budget issues that schools grapple with every year and for many years to come. Addressing the several board members who backpedal on their position to fully reopen schools at the meeting of July 21st, after reviewing the statements that you made during the meeting of July 14th, it is clear that your intentions are that meeting do not match your claimed intentions as stated at the July 21st meeting. Your efforts have hampered the administration and likely cost the community further viable education options. Dr. Bedden, I implore you to stay in the district as BASD superintendent and continue to be an advocate for education and a force of positive change within our community. Thank you. That concludes my statements.
So, Mr. President, the list that we received, I see a Kaylin Hendrick, but I don't see her on the list anywhere unless she's dialing in on the phone. Ms. Hendrick, can you do a *6 if you are? Okay, I see, hold on, I see Mr. Updegrove sign in as Ms. Denon, so I can pull him over. Bear with me, Mr. President, I just found Mr. Updegrove. Okay. Kaylin Hendrick, if you're, you hit *6 if you're in the audience. We have 620 people online, so, and your name is not coming up. The next person I have is Chris Hoffer, Mr. President. I have a Melissa Hoffer. Ms. Hoffer, Melissa Hoffer, can you unmute your mic? Is Melissa Hoffer Chris Hoffer? Melissa Hoffer? Okay. They're gone, Mr. President. The next person I have is Ralph Shar. Mr. Shar, can you unmute your mic?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I want to preface my comments by first, Dr. Bedden, you know, I serve on the Parent Advisory Council and also on the BEARS Task Force. And from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of a whole bunch of, other parents, I really hope that you stay with the school district. And because we think, you know, you've done made a tremendous difference. My other comments are geared towards the reopening of the schools. I mean, as everybody knows, the numbers are constantly changing, you know, between the different states. So will tonight be the night where the school board makes a decision about if we're going to have a full opening or a hybrid opening, or if we're going to start off with cyber? I tried to look at some of the documents on the school district's website, but some of the links didn't work. I just hope whatever decision is being made by the board members, that everybody can set their personal convictions, political agendas, personal agendas aside, and really focus on the safety of the students, the safety of the staff. You know, these are actual lives we're dealing with. And it's not just the students' lives, but they return to their families, you know, they interact with grandparents, they interact with individuals like me who's immunocompromised. So, you know, there's a tremendous responsibility on the board. And you guys wanted to be on the board, so you were elected to be on the board. But please, please, please focus on the health and safety of the students and staff. That's all I have to say. I don't need my entire 3 minutes, plus I'm going to be talking later again anyway. think I lowered my hand.
I believe next up will be Jennifer Thompson.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Thompson. I live at 133 Dove Drive in Gilbertsville. I am a parent of 3. One is a 9th grader and one is a 3rd grader. In regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, I'd like to share a health event that occurred with my 21-month-old daughter, who is considered high risk. On February 28th, 2019, my daughter had a low-grade fever of 100+ degrees. It was nothing concerning, a typical fever, and I gave her some Motrin. A short time later, she became unconscious, unresponsive, stiff and frozen, and began drooling. I thought she was having a stroke. But what she was experiencing was a seizure that lasted 45 minutes. We went to Lehigh Valley Children's ER via ambulance, where they sedated her and intubated her because her seizure would not stop. She had a CAT scan, MRI, lumbar puncture, and blood work done in order to get answers, even though it was suspected that she had meningitis. She was in the PICU for 4 days. Through blood work, my daughter was diagnosed with the coronavirus. She's my 3rd child, and until then, I had never even heard of the coronavirus. 40 days later, on April 8th, 2019, she had another seizure. Her immune system just had not fully recovered from the virus, which is why the smallest cold caused another seizure in her little 21-month-old body and required another ambulance ride and another hospitalization. Now, let me stress that my daughter did not have COVID-19. It was a different strain, but it's very possible that COVID-19 will have similar effects on children as we are learning more about the novel virus daily. We just don't know. I share this story because this is one child who attends a small daycare with approximately 50 kids. I don't even want to imagine the ramifications that are possible in buildings with hundreds of children and teachers. And I don't think Boyertown children and teachers should be guinea pigs. I look forward to learning more about Boyertown's virtual learning option tonight, as I want to keep my money in the district and keep my kids safe at the same time. Thank you to the district and BAEA for listening and for your efforts. I also urge the board to approve the August 31st start date so teachers are given more time to prepare. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you to everyone who spoke. And I believe last we have Mr. Roth.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Foose, Dr. Bedden, and board members. My name is Chad Roth, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Boyertown Area Education Association, the union that represents professional staff members employed by the district. Last week, I spoke and encouraged the board to deliberately and judiciously consider the proposed health and safety plan and any subsequent plan to reopen our schools, with our members' health and safety as your top priority. Our schools cannot successfully educate our students if staff and students are not healthy and ready to teach and learn. I also indicated that our members and leadership stood at the ready. Many signed up for committees to help the district arrive at the best possible outcome. Tonight, I'd like to publicly thank Dr. Bedden, Mrs. Torsha, Mr. Stout, and Ms. Richard for the countless hours spent since last week participating in discussions with BAEA leadership, committee members, regular members, with parents, community members, all in the hopes of collaborating on ways to move forward in these very challenging times. You've listened intently to our members' concerns and ideas and taken them into consideration. For that, on behalf of BAEA and its members, I wish to thank you. As we bear witness to the current events and watch the rates of infection of COVID-19 continue to increase in Berks and Montgomery counties, I speak again tonight to ask the board to continue deliberately and judiciously considering the options put before you in the coming days and weeks. The health and safety of our members, your staff, and collectively the health and safety of our students must remain the top priority. If staff and students are not protected and healthy, no other part of an education or health and safety plan really matters. As a school system, we must protect our staff and students and begin preparing to educate students in whatever reopening scenario the circumstances will allow. Staff, parents, and the community need direction to begin preparing for a return to school in any capacity, and will need time to consider your decisions and make plans that accommodate their schooling, childcare, family, and personal needs. We look forward to continuing our work with administration seeking the best possible solution. As schools create these health and safety and reopening plans, it remains clear that there is no right answer that will satisfy everyone's needs and desires. But if we frame the discussion from the standpoint of staff and student safety, we can develop plans that work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that was our last person who had signed up. So we are concluding public comment period number 1. And we're going to move ahead to approval of the minutes. First, we have approval of the minutes for June 16th, 2020.
Hogan moves.
Darrow seconds.
I believe we have Ms. Hogan, followed by Ms. Deeroff with a second. Are there any comments or questions on these minutes? All right, let's move to the vote.
Mrs. Deeroff,
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan,
Yes.
Mrs. Denon,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Ms. Nyman,
Yes.
Mrs. McWhirter,
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove, Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Mr. Food.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, next we have the minutes from the June 23rd meeting.
Hogan moves.
Darrow seconds.
All right, we have the same team. Ms. Hogan with the motion, Ms. Deeroff seconds. Are there any comments on these minutes? All right, we'll proceed to the vote.
Mrs. Deeroff,
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan,
Yes.
Mrs. Denon,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Mrs. Nyman,
Yes, and I cannot mute myself either.
Mrs. McWhirter, Mrs. McWhirter, I see your thumbs up. Mr. Updegrove, Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Mr. Foos.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
The next item we have is the report of the president, and I do have a statement that I'd like to read this evening. Back on June 16th, our board discussed and voted on a joint letter highlighting our commitment as a district to the ideas of inclusion and kindness. That statement read in part, "We feel at this moment it is important to reaffirm that our school community strives to maintain a safe, positive learning environment for all, free from discrimination based on race, color, age, creed, religion, sex, sexual orientation, ancestry, national origin, marital status, pregnancy, and handicap or disability." And that reflects one of our board policies as well. The statement goes on to describe our vision and values, as well as our participation in the No Place for Hate program. It is with great sadness that I feel compelled to broach this topic yet again so soon after that statement. We have been concurrently streaming our past several meetings on Zoom and Facebook Live in order to keep our community engaged and informed throughout this difficult time. Unfortunately, during our last meeting on July 21st, abhorrent comments were posted by a couple of individuals on the live video streamed on our district's Facebook page. Although Facebook is a third-party platform with its own rules and regulations for use, the district's pages are under control of district personnel and as such still adhere to our policies. The comments were reported at the time and were either removed by our communications person, deleted by the users, and/or removed by Facebook. Not only were these comments inappropriate, but their hateful nature was observed by community members, parents, students, and staff following along with our meeting. Our policies require that students and staff demonstrate a certain level of respect and decorum in our learning community. My intent as board president is to continue to uphold the values in our mission, vision, and goals, and to encourage anyone wishing to engage with our school district to do so in a way that extends the same ideals of inclusion and kindness beyond the walls of our building. We are quickly approaching the start of a school year unlike any in recent memory. Our ability to succeed will need to be a community effort, requiring all of us to care about one another's well-being. Thank you to those who brought this matter to our attention. A statement has been added to our social media pages in response to these events. Rather than read it in its entirety, I would like to just highlight a couple of the topics that it touches on. The disclaimer touches on the fact that our social media platforms are not intended to supplant other official communication channels. Please see the district website, which is linked in the post that I'm describing for those communication channels. The disclaimer also specifies that hate speech, verbal or written, is defined as public speech that expresses hate or encourages violence towards a person or group based on something such as race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. These types of comments will be removed. The disclaimer then goes on to request that if you become aware of comments that you believe violate any of these stipulations, please email communications@boyertownasd.org and we will look into the matter and take appropriate actions. It then concludes, as I will, by stating to please help us to continue to promote respectful dialogue and sharing of ideas. That concludes my president's report this evening. Next, we have the treasurer's report.
Which document do you want displayed, Mr. Hayes?
Oh, not the food service, but the one marked as the May treasurer's report.
You muted yourself again.
I'm sorry, I believe the third page. Oh, two more, I'm sorry. Yes, right there. Good evening. I would like to highlight some of the items for the May treasurer's report. For local revenue, earned income tax was approximately $109,000. Delinquent real estate tax was approximately $58,000. Real estate transfer tax was approximately $95,000, followed by tax collectors collecting approximately $32,000. In regards to state revenue, we received from PDE, Social Security subsidy, approximately $351,000. And moving on to federal revenues, Title I was approximately $138,000. Title IIA was approximately $20,000, followed by Title IV for $3,000. In regards to May expenditures, salaries and benefits account for 84% of the monthly expenditure. And that concludes the highlights of the month of the May Treasury report. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And the recommended action is that the board approves the treasurer's report as presented. So do we have a motion?
Denon moves.
Brophy second.
All right, we have Ms. Denon with the motion and Mr. Brophy with the second. Are there any comments or questions? All right, we will move to the vote for that.
Mrs. Deeroff. Mrs. Deeroff.
Yes. I couldn't get unmuted, sorry.
That's okay. Mrs. Hogan.
Yes.
Mrs. Denon.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman.
No.
Mrs. McWhirter.
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove. Mr. Hemingway.
Yes.
Mr. Fuchs.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-1.
All right, next we have the secretary's report.
No report.
And then the solicitor's report.
No report.
And then we will now move to the superintendent's report.
Good evening again, everyone. We moved these two items up in the agenda because obviously they are the two high priority items and we grouped them together. The first part of this is to provide an update on the current status and the impact of COVID-19, but then also to provide an instructional update on the progress that is being made with regards to developing our offerings for instruction. And bear with me while the information is coming up. Trying to make sure that we have the correct display, unlike last time. Mr. President, can you all see the full screen this time?
Yes.
Thank you. This is just a reminder that what our vision, mission, and goals are for the district, and that the health and safety plan, while also trying to meet the requirements of the state mandate, also align with two of our district goals with regards to we were using data and resources that were made available to us to make informed decisions. But the most important one was that our goal as a district is to always provide a positive, safe, and healthy learning environment. Wanted to remind those who may not have joined, remind those who've joined us previously and those who may be new for the first time that we actually had a pandemic team in place with identified pandemic coordinator. And additionally, we always had meetings outside of that, working directly with our association. We also had parent representation on this. The state guidelines gave districts a choice of pandemic coordinator or team. We chose to have a team and an identified pandemic coordinator as part of it. The numbers fluctuated up sometimes above 20, but approximately 20 people on average. A variety of departments, as you see in bullet number 2, were represented, and that is not all inclusive, but to give a sampling of the number of people who are involved in this process. The pandemic team approach actually resembles very much what you would call as a RACI Matrix process. And the RACI Matrix is an acronym derived from 4 key responsibilities. One being the R, which is responsible and recommender, A being accountable, and then C being consulted, and then the final one is informed. I say this because this process has been truly a collaborative team effort. There is no one person who made this plan, and that no matter, as we have had fluidity between the team members, as you can see, some members were part of the response team, some members were part of the plan development, as we look up here at the top, and then some members were a part of both. And so it's about being cross-functional in this process so that no one person makes up the entire process. Tonight, the board will be asked to approve the health and safety plan. It is important to remember that we have an instructional model that has been discussed, but you also have a health and safety plan document that is required by the state. And the emphasis of that health and safety plan is to provide guidance on how we're able to reopen schools from an instructional and non-instructional standpoint. Those 2 documents are independent but also intertwined. I say that because it's important to realize that, one, we try to tailor it to meet the unique needs of our school district. School districts all over the Commonwealth are going through this process. I know that some neighboring districts met last night, some have meetings tonight, and some have meetings scheduled for the first week in August. So we are no farther necessarily ahead or behind. It just depends on your internal calendar that you try to develop for this process. More importantly, even when the board approves the health and safety plan, the state reminds us and asks us to remind our constituents that it has to be built on flexibility and fluidity. That as conditions change with data, we have to be able to change. So even though the board approves the health and safety plan, in the way we meet that by developing an instructional model that you will hear about later, that could change. We may need to change from one format to another one based on the circumstances and conditions. Everything from if things go great and they find a cure, for example, and we can go full open again, to if things get worse, we could very well not wait for the state and have to go full virtual. That may be a local level decision that has to be made based on the data. Where now the plan that you received previously was built upon and tailored to the unique needs of our community based on the survey data, the input. We worked very hard to try to factor in both considerations of our students, our parents, our community, and our teachers. And there are times that they did not agree in what the entities wanted, both separate entities or inside the entities with regards to the feedback. To bring the board and the community up to date on some things that have happened since the last time we met, the CDC did release some updated guidelines this past week. Most importantly, again, they acknowledge that this fall has significant challenges for schools in their ability to implement the mitigation measures. They are publicly acknowledging that social distancing, the cleaning, the hygiene, and the face coverings does present some challenges for our schools. In fact, they've made some adjustments in some of their wording to acknowledge that situation. But they also acknowledge that schools are an important part of the community. We play a critical role in the well-being of the community, both health and safety, but also financially. We provide critical instruction, academic support, which is our main thing, but we also play a significant part in the social emotional health of our students based on school. We have a mental health component, but one of the things that sometimes goes unnoticed is that we have other special services that are important to our students and key services, such as our food service program, our special education related service program, our after school programs that serve the unique needs of many students that not only with us for academic instruction, but stay with us through extended day opportunities. They define the different types of processes as low risk, more risk, and high risk with regards to the spread of COVID-19. The lowest risk, and again, the lowest risk, there is no one method that will guarantee not being exposed to COVID-19, which is why they call lowest, more, and highest. But the lowest risk, obviously, is students, teachers engage in virtual only classrooms and activities and events. Obviously, that creates challenges with meeting the other issues that we've talked about with regards to social emotional development, the specialized services that we are asked to provide to our students and family. There are more risks, but not the highest, with small in-person classes and activities and events. The idea is grouping students to stay together within the same teacher across school days, trying to minimize the mixing as best you can as possible, trying to remain at least 6 feet apart, again, as best we can. But they just recently released an updated statement about ensuring that groups maintain a small physical distance that is at least 6 feet if possible. So they have publicly now recognized the challenges that schools are facing with trying to do that. And of course, the highest risk is in-person classes, full size, with students not being able to be spread apart or sharing classroom and materials. The ultimate thing that we want to remind our constituents is that we have to have the good hygiene, the good cleaning and disinfecting, the hand washing, and then of course, most importantly, when you're sick, to stay at home and not come to school. We continue to work with our health officials, and to the extent possible, we're again trying to meet the unique needs of our community and circumstances. That is not easy. We are guided by what's feasible and practical and acceptable in this process. And again, I don't think there is a right answer to this situation. It is a challenging situation, and no matter what we pick, there are going to be risks. What also has happened is the Infectious Disease Society of America drilled down even more and reviewed a lot of the guidance and recommendations that were being provided. One of the key things is the unresolved question that schools were dealing with around the 3 feet and 6 feet distancing. And of course, they noted the new guidance with CDC mentioning it when feasible to try to get to 6 feet. American Academy of Pediatrics talked about the spacing of 3 feet, may approach the benefits of the 6 feet of space. But most importantly, they released a research study that had basically saying that they found a risk of infection by keeping a distance of 3 feet or more was about 3%, compared to 13% when you get less than 3 feet, as they're trying to help schools understand what to do or not to do. Again, most importantly, safer schools are developed by, they're saying, the mask and face coverings, which is a mandate by the state. As we keep getting questions, we no longer have a choice in the matter at the local level. It is a mandate with face coverings that is mandated by the state, so we don't have the ability to not require face masks as part of our plan. And our plan was updated to meet that requirement as part of the process. Physical distancing, which we are trying to do, of course, the hand hygiene, and then ventilation. And we're trying to use evidence-based policies and protocols. And we're trying to be flexible, and we continue to consult with health experts. We also internally, as the board approved, we brought our nurses back as part of the district staffing and payroll process. And later today, you're being asked to approve the appointment of a coordinator of nursing services, so that we have a designated point of contact, for example, for DOH to deal with, and our partner physician in our community. We continue to monitor the community spread. This was originally one of the key metric data that the state was using. They're no longer using this, but they still report it. We use it to see what is happening with regards to the growth. As you can see, originally, we had a target of 210 cases that was used originally when they were using the red, yellow, and green. We have not been under the 210 mark since July 16th. And the Berks County 7-day average of new cases has remained steady at around 28, but our 14-day total is still rising. Again, it's a data point that we continue to look at. It is not something that the state is actively using again, but they do monitor as part of a holistic process and making decisions about what's happening in communities. We also have been monitoring and using the Georgia Tech COVID-19 risk assessment planning tool. This is a static picture. The actual tool actually is fluid. It factors in the size and the cases within your community to give you updated numbers. But we thought it was important to see that, the impact of crowd size. This is part of also the tool we use when we're trying to talk about decreasing the number of students that are inside our building. The number of kids that are in one building matter with regards to the likelihood of someone coming in contact with someone who may be positive with COVID-19. As you can see here, which is typically around what the state tries to tell us to do with regards to class size of 25, crowd size of 25 in the community, which we try to target as best we can within our schools. And then you see what happens with regards to when you get up to 50, which we don't have any classes that size, of course. We hover around here, 25, 27, 28. But then you get into building size, and we don't want to get up in these numbers, which is why, as best possible, we try to decrease the number of students inside our building, and then we try to break them up into smaller groups within the building, which you'll see later with one of the changes we made upon student arrival, what happens during the day when they enter school to start the school day. We shared this last week. Parents, some have sent emails asking. We thought it was important to, again, remind parents of our exclusion practices and return to school format. This is available, but it outlines what we will be expecting and looking for a student to return to school if they are demonstrating COVID-19 symptoms, if they're positive with COVID-19 with symptoms, if they are positive without symptoms, and if they have a close contact or close contact without symptoms. Important to remember is these key things that we are recommending, that if you obviously have the symptoms for your health and well-being, that you do get tested. If you return and we go through a protocol asking you these questions, the parent will be asked to respond to those questions as part of the return process. And of course, you could bring a doctor's note, which we will accept also. And that is what we're looking at for the first 3 phases. These 2 will refer back to up here, depending on what happens in the process. But that is what we will be looking at when we exclude a student from school based on COVID-19 symptoms and or positive COVID-19 or close contact issues. We work and will always work closely and follow the guidance of the Department of Health. Department of Health is designated to assist the school with risk assessments. So when we have an incident, just as we did in the spring, we call the Department of Health and we follow their recommendations and guidance with regards to whether to implement isolation, any quarantine recommendations, any infection control recommendations. They are the ultimate person that we typically follow the guidance from. If an individual is tested positive, we will not be identifying the person by name in any communications. We will notify, as we did in the spring, our school community appropriately based on the guidance from the Department of Health that helps determine how broad we should communicate the communication with regards to a positive contact. Obviously, if we are informed outside of the Department of Health and they call us and notify us through their contact tracing, we then immediately contact the Department of Health before acting, and then we follow their direction again with regards to next steps. And we are also, one of the reasons we decreased capacity within our buildings is we had to create space to also have what we call isolation space should we have an incident inside the school and we need to isolate an individual or individuals from the entire student population waiting for them to exit the building. DOH will give us the guidance on any guidance on whether or not we have to evacuate or close the entire building. We would not make that decision independent of consulting with DOH. They may tell us to close off a particular area, which again, decreasing the number of students in the building allowed the freeing of some classes within our building, so that if we have to close off a particular area and we still have to function, we do have the ability to move students and staff to other locations in the building while that location goes under cleaning and disinfecting. And of course, we have a protocol and communication system for staff for self-reporting through HR. Mr. Stout will be joining us here shortly. First and foremost, I do want to say that the safety and well-being is a priority, and it is a priority for students and staff in a part of the decision-making process that we've gone through. That does remain at the forefront of this process. Mr. Stout?
Thank you, Dr. Bedden. And I do want to reiterate some of the comments that were made a little bit earlier about the collaborative nature and the team effort. This has truly been a daunting task to try to coordinate instruction, and the conversations that we've had, we truly are trying to reinvent education and work as an effective team to help support our students. And to Dr. Bedden's point, the health and safety of all is key. So I do want to thank everyone. To reiterate Mr. Roth's comments a little bit earlier, it's a daunting task, and what we're going to present with you tonight is our step for moving forward to hopefully provide as effective instructional practices for our students, but yet still maintain the health and safety for our students and staff. So first slide kicking off talks about questions have come up about IEP teams, IEP students with IEPs. They are always going to be taken into consideration, specifically with individualized education plan teams when we're making decisions moving forward, and that will continue to be the case. Another big component when we think about scheduling and what our scaffolded hybrid model looks like is really thinking of our Berks Career and Technology Center students, because they have a pretty regimented schedule for an AM and a PM session. So consideration always needs to be taken into consideration for our students that attend BCTC. So the 4 bullets that you see in front of you are really talking about how we're moving forward with our proposal for a hybrid plan. And I also would like to thank the school board for some guidance last week to help provide some parameters to move forward to help plan for this presentation. This has been an ongoing process that hasn't really ended over the weekends or in the evenings trying to come up with a plan. But ultimately, we are looking at a reconfiguration of our grade levels and buildings that support social distancing. Dr. Bedden presented information on that last week. With our reconfiguration of students, it gives us approximately, on the average, 75% of building capacity within all of our buildings with our new configuration. So if you look to the right, it talks about our new configuration will be K through 4 will be our elementary school students. Grades 5 and 6, let me go back to grades K through 4. They will attend their neighborhood elementary schools. In grades 5 through 6, they will move to the middle school building and will attend the middle school that they would typically attend as the feeder from their elementary school. We were looking at grades 7 through 9 in high school, and also grades 10 through 12, with the difference being that our grades 7 through 9 would attend school on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, providing asynchronous and synchronous learning on the other 2 days. And the flip of that is on the days that grades 10, 11, and 12 are in our high school, which would be Monday and Thursday, the grades 7 through 9 would not be attending on those days. So again, trying to maintain that capacity of 75% capacity within our buildings or less. With this new configuration, if you move down to the bottom bullet, it talks about how it will help with transportation and providing social distancing opportunities on our buses. And it also, moving forward to the last bullet, talks about, and I think Dr. Bedden had discussed this in an earlier slide, as we move through these colors, and I think it's a little bit of a misconception, the colors that have been presented when we look at red, yellow, and green. Everybody, when they think of green, it thinks that green means go. But in reality, the green process really had a lot of restrictions that go along with that. So when the team came together, we tried to come up with a plan that when we potentially move between yellow and green, we would have the opportunity to provide a consistent program for our students. So this is what we're looking at to help move forward so we don't have to do some drastic changes when or if the color status changes. Next slide, Dr. Bedden. So another key indicator that Dr. Bedden made reference to, we have received a lot of communications from families. We have worked collaboratively with the BAEA. We have created 4 separate committees, all focusing on specific topics. We have collaborated with a BAEA teacher committee. And one of the consistent concerns that had been transpiring with all of the committee work was thinking about the current proposal that we had in place and thinking in terms of our elementary school kids coming to our buildings every day of the week. And in comparison to what our middle school environment would look like and what our high school environment would look like. So what we want to propose, and this is a little a new information from last week, but again, listening to feedback that we receive from our stakeholders across the district, is to go along with what our scaffolded approach is with the high school. We wanted to propose a new scaffolded model at the elementary school, which really in terms would be 4 days of in-person instruction. We were considering that 4 days of instruction would be Monday through Thursday, with Friday being a day that kids would work from their homes synchronistically as well as asynchronistically. So that means that they would have some face-to-face time with their teachers, but they would also have time to be working on separate projects. By doing this, instead of having 5 days of face-to-face instruction, if you look at the bottom bullets on this particular slide, it potentially reduces the exposure at all of our schools by 20% each week. It does allow for deeper cleaning of our buildings over extended weekend time frame. And specifically, if we'd be looking at Monday or Friday as the day that our students don't arrive, we have seen some neighboring school districts come with a plan where students might not attend on a Wednesday. But when we met with Mr. Drescher and the operations team, the thought was that having 3 consistent days in a row that we wouldn't have our kids in the building would allow for deeper cleaning to happen on over the weekend. And with the kids not being in there on a Friday or a Monday, it would give a little more flexibility for cleaning processes. Not to mention from a childcare perspective for our families, it would potentially provide an easier opportunity rather than having a day midweek that would need a childcare situation for families. And finally, on that day that our elementary school students would not arrive or would not attend in the brick and mortar building, it would allow for more teacher collaboration. It would allow for more virtual planning preparation to help support effective instructional practices. And it also would provide the opportunity for differentiated support for students who need it on that day, who might need a little more support than what can be provided on some of those other days. And teachers could provide office time, office hours, and scenarios that would help support our students. Next slide, Dr. Bedden. The next series of slides you saw in last week's presentation if you were attending. And it really is, I know one of the pre-board comments, or I shouldn't say pre-board, one of the statements that was read in the beginning really talked about creating a video for what it looks like. We wanted to put these slides back into the presentation to really give a perspective of this being an elementary school classroom where seats here are seated 4 feet apart. Or the seats are actually 4 feet apart and the desks are 3 feet apart to give some perspective. Next slide, please. The next slide is looking at secondary classrooms, and these desks are 4 feet apart. But again, looking at what a classroom looks like, we have asked all of our teachers within their classrooms to take out all their personal items. So the classroom in general will be a lot more clear. It will be not having so many items within it, and the students will be sitting in rows. So next slide, Dr. Bedden.
And it is important to note that if you also see in this particular classroom, for example, where there are windows, one of the mitigation strategies is also to open, as long as weather permitting, that helps with the ventilation and circulation of natural air in this particular case. And we've gotten questions about video and other examples. Those are things that once we have a vote on which way we're firmly going, we will be producing some visuals and video opportunities for parents to see what is going to happen. But as you see this classroom setup, we want you to be mindful of that. For those who will be potentially back in person, should we be able to come back in person and nothing happens to create a challenge with doing that with growing cases, class in school is going to be very different. It's going to not be what our children have seen in the past because of the limitations and trying to maintain social distancing. And that's important, I think, for our parents to remember and our students. While many of them will be excited to come back, it is going to be different in what it looks like and feels like. And that's something that is going to require a lot of conversation and support for our children, both in school, but also when they come home and talk to the parents about what it was like having to remain apart from each other during the school day.
So the next slide is looking at, and by the way, these are actual slides from buildings within the Boyertown Area School District. This slide is, again, a repeat from last week, but it shows what social distancing would look like in our cafeterias. And the pink slips on the squares or on the tables actually being the area that students would be sitting at the tables. Next slide, please. Some of the mitigation strategies that have been thrown around and trying to figure out how to maintain safer environments within our classrooms is the use of plexiglass. If you visit the Ed Center, there are specific areas of our Ed Center that we've installed plexiglass to try to mitigate the spread of germs of the virus. And we are looking and working with our operations team to come up with areas within the district that might have bigger groups or have to work individually with groups, closer with groups, and to be able to install and support options like this with the use of plexiglass between desks, around desks to help support that safety measure.
And please don't walk away thinking this is exactly what it looks like. We just wanted to give a visual depiction of some of the other mitigation strategies that we're looking at with regards to our classroom situation.
Another team that has been paramount in this process is our K-12 virtual learning planning team. They have been on board for approximately 3 weeks, I'll say, and it's a team of 42 teachers that represent numerous areas of our school district. And what they have been working on over the past weeks is really coming up with what can virtual learning look like within our environment. Dr. Bed made this point earlier. Our numbers across the county, across the state are not getting better. They certainly appear to be moving on the negative side. So as we potentially plan for what is going to transpire for our upcoming school year, we would be remiss if we did not have a virtual opportunity to plan for with our students, because there could be a very strong possibility as we move forward that we might have to move to full-time virtual for all of our students. And this virtual planning team has been working diligently behind the scenes and really spearheaded by Dr. Obero to really help support what instructional practices and effective instructional practices in the virtual environment can look like. I know we have received a lot of communication with concerns with what our instructional practices look like in spring of 2020 when we had emergency remote teaching and learning. I just need to remind everyone that our teachers worked as diligently as they possibly could during that time, and understand that when Dr. Bedden got the call on that infamous, I believe it was March 12th or March 13th, I don't remember specifically, we literally had 2.5 hours of time to close our schools, and teachers never returned to their classrooms until the summer. So the instruction that took place was instruction that was based upon materials, resources that could be acquired outside of their classroom to help move processes forward. Our kids didn't have technology. They didn't have any of the tools in advance of knowing this situation was going to take place. So as we move to the fall of 2020 and we look at potential virtual options for our district, I want to just put out that it's coordinated online teaching and learning. Our teachers will be teaching from their classrooms. They'll have access to all their resources. As we talk about in some upcoming slides, the professional learning that will be embedded in the process will be very much focused on virtual learning. Prior to March of this past school year, we provided professional learning for our teachers, but we never provided professional learning for our teachers that was all of a sudden shutting our schools down. So as we move forward, we know what our status is, so we are planning for the future and really thinking about what did we learn from our past experiences to understand where we are, to really plan for where we want to move forward. So that's a big difference in looking at where we'll be moving on to next year. So the district cyber opportunities, and we want to distinguish the two cyber opportunities by calling them cyber opportunities. The first one is really our BASD virtual learning option, which is a new learning option that we have for our students across the district. And the previous virtual learning option is the Berks Online Learning Academy that we have with a partnership with BCIU. So I'll back up a little bit and specifically talk about a change that's going to take place for the short term for a communication is Mrs. Rebecca Hester will be moving. Our supervisor for secondary curriculum has moved to a different district, a district much closer to his home. But in the meantime, we are using Becca Hester to hopefully facilitate conversations, facilitate questions that may be asked by families. So everyone understands, before I moved into the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, I was the principal of Colbertdale for many years, and one of my secondary responsibilities over that time was to be the cyber coordinator for the district. And I worked very closely with Becca Hester for many years, hand in hand to build the Boyertown Cyber Academy that we utilize. So she's very versed on cyber. She's one of our instructional coaches within the district with really a focus on technology, and she's gonna do a great job in that. But as we look at the two different options that we are proposing, is that the BASD virtual learning option is a very proactive approach that working with the Boyertown Education Association that is going to be a combination of synchronistic learning with asynchronistic learning. So let me clarify what synchronistic learning is. Right now, for all of you that are watching this Zoom session, you are watching it synchronistically. So as I am presenting to you, I'm presenting information to you, and it's in a synchronistic capacity. If I were to, stop the feed right now and would say to you, please, write a report on how you feel the board meeting is going right now, and gave you an activity to do based upon what would transpire during the course of the board meeting, that would be considered an asynchronous activity, where it would be something that would be simulated like an assignment. So our Boyertown virtual learning option will be a combination of synchronistic learning as well as asynchronistic learning. One of the main key points that the feedback we receive from many of our families around the district is that they want Boyertown teachers. They want to have relationships with teachers. If in fact we get to potentially go back to brick and mortar 100% and everything's moving forward, that Boyertown teacher connection is a huge piece. So the learning and the instruction that would be happening in our classrooms on a real-time basis would then be projected, would be supported to our families, outside in the virtual world to help the students learn whatever the instructional target is for that particular day. Another key piece to this virtual learning option is that this option itself is aligned with the brick and mortar schedule that your students would typically have. So if I have 7, 8, 9 periods or whatever I have at the middle level, high school level, my schedule for the course of the day would align with what the schedule is that I would have in the brick and mortar environment. So it would very much follow through with what that process would look like. I will tell you that synchronistic learning is not really, as I'm speaking at all of you right now for, multiple minutes. Synchronistic learning isn't necessarily the teacher speaking at students for that whole period of time. They may do a mini lesson. They may do an assignment. They may work collaboratively in a breakout session with kids. They may do some different scenarios that really aren't just watching their students over on a Zoom session the whole period of time. So it's going to be an evolution of what education is going to move towards for the fall. So it's going to be a whole learning process for many of our teachers. The Berks Online component that has been in place for the Boyertown Area School District for many years continues. It's a strong program. Every year we have over 100+ students that facilitate in that program. It's a partnership with Berks County Intermediate Unit. It is the majority of learning that takes place is asynchronistic learning. It's through the platform of Edgenuity. It's instructed by BOL teachers. They are not Boyertown teachers, but we stay attached to the progress that our students are making. They're assigned to building level counselors. They do participate in activities that are part of what can happen within the brick and mortar environment. And one significant difference for the Berks Online Learning compared to our proposal for the BASD virtual learning option is it does provide flexible scheduling. If we are going to be moving with the BASD virtual learning option, the schedule in the brick and mortar class is really going to drive what the student does during the course of that day. And if I'm supposed to be in a math class period 2, and that period starts at 8:15 in the morning, whatever that might be, the student's going to be expected to be online, getting attendance, and then working with the teacher in the class at that particular day to move forward with what instruction would look like. In the Berks Online option, looking at our current cyber program, that schedule's a flexible schedule. So because it's asynchronistic learning, kids can kind of work at their own pace and kind of work moving forward at the way they feel most appropriate to meet their needs. If there's struggles, there's support provided. If they have the ability to move ahead and accelerate a little bit, that opportunity provides itself as well. Next slide, Dr. B. So right here, you'll see a compare and contrast between BASD virtual learning and our Berks Online Learning. And again, these are two Boyertown programs. The BASD virtual learning is a new one that we're starting to roll out tonight. We talked a little bit about it last week, but we're rolling it out tonight. And most importantly, it's Boyertown teachers that are supporting it. Students would be assigned to their homeroom and they would continue working in the schedule that would be part of their homeroom. The format is a combination of synchronistic learning as well as asynchronous learning, and the instructional activities that are accessible within the online platform. As I stated earlier, the schedule is very fixed. It follows the regular school day. The curriculum is standards aligned. It would follow what good curricular practices we have within our district. And again, extracurriculars, all of those would be activities that students would have access to, and they would get a Boyertown diploma. Moving on to our Berks Online platform, and again, what has been in place for many years, you can read all of the options and the comparison there. Big difference is that it is asynchronous. It is more about assignments and getting feedback and getting time with teachers for small instructional pockets of time, but not getting a lot of synchronous learning for our students. A big difference is that it's flexible. Any time of the day or night, our students can work on their assignments. It is specifically aligned with state standards. The platform, curricular-wise, that's utilized is called Edgenuity. Odysseyware, there's some flexibility with the curriculum platforms that are part of it. Same thing with the access to extracurricular and student supports. They have the ability to do that. And finally, you receive a Boyertown diploma. Everybody might say, well, what does virtual learning look like in our new BASD virtual learning option? This is just a snapshot of some tools that we have within our district, or we will be acquiring within our district. That bottom one I'm going to start with is what we call a Chromebook. And with grades 11 and 12, we have Chromebooks. In grades 11 and 12, we have Windows-based laptops. But we are moving forward with grades K through 10, purchasing Chromebooks for all of our students so they have one-to-one connectivity. There was already a plan in place to support our kids in grades 6 through 10 with Chromebooks for this upcoming school year, but we're expediting that process and have asked for support from the school board for authorization to purchase Chromebooks for the rest of our students. As many of you remember, in our spring pandemic situation, we had enough devices at the middle and high school level to support all of our students, but at the elementary school level, we did not. So we want to expedite the process to get devices in the hands of our students so that they have accessibility outside of that classroom, as well as inside of the classroom if they so choose to attend, because there are many resources that can be provided through their portal of their Chromebook. So what you see up there are teacher supports. You see things from a webcam. Up in the right-hand corner is a smartboard. Down to the left-hand side is an HDMI cable. That is a cable that will connect a laptop to devices in the classroom. And finally, we are looking at that last little item there, which is a relatively inexpensive item. It costs less than $100, but it's kind of a portable tablet. And what that portable tablet does is a teacher can utilize that tablet and write on that tablet. But what is really cool about this is that tablet itself then will show up on the teacher's screen of their computer. And in that process, the screen then can be shared with like a Zoom session like Dr. Bedden's doing right now, and can also be projected on the smartboard. So a device such as this, and literally Mr. Ionelli, again, celebrate him for all of the corrections for the firewall today, because that was quite an issue, but we got a couple of these tablets in to try to really maximize what we can do in our classrooms. But what's exciting about it is the instruction that's happening at the hands of a teacher can be projected to the full class, as well as through the virtual platform, the streaming platform at the same time. So it would benefit the kids that are attending brick and mortar, and it would also benefit the students that are attending virtually.
It is important for everyone to know that this plan was focused on trying to create flexibility and portability for our teachers, no matter where they are, whether they're able to deliver instruction in their classroom, or for some reason we were shut down totally, that they could actually still teach from no matter where they are. So we opted not to focus with a lot of fixed assets in the classroom, but to make sure that we had portability and flexibility within the capacity of each teacher, no matter what happened in this process. We also wanted to make sure that no matter what happened with a student who was excluded because of what you saw in exclusionary chart, or a high-risk student, that they had the ability to connect with a student, whether they were sitting in front of them in the classroom, or if they had to be sitting at home at that time that they were teaching in the classroom. We believe that this is creating the most flexibility possible, and also allowing our teachers to still do what they do best and focus on how they're teaching, just giving them tools to share that with someone remotely when they're not able to sit in the physical classroom.
So I think one of the statements that was read to the school board early on was really to support the calendar change that is being proposed, and I concur with that request. I beyond appreciate the work from Mrs. Torsha, and really thinking about all of the health and safety plan, but also being proactive for this calendar adjustment, because she is not only the pandemic queen, but she is also the calendar queen, which doesn't come across right, but I just am saying that because every time there's a calendar change or calendar adjustment, she is right on top of that, looking at what the impact would be. But in thinking in terms of what would happen, moving our start date from our school year from August 24th to August 31st, what it is going to do is provide opportunities, professional learning opportunities for our teachers across our district to really understand, to study best practice, to really be, learning education from day one, and thinking about how can we support the needs of our students through this virtual platform, but also through our brick and mortar platform. How can we maximize our time together? So that calendar adjustment is going to allow for those instructional opportunities. It's also going to provide for safety and mitigation strategies, because just the common practice of leaving a classroom, arrival in classroom, all of those scenarios are going to have to be new processes for our teachers that and our students that they're not accustomed to. So it's going to allow the opportunity for that to happen. The last part on this slide is really just thinking about the feedback that we received in the initial survey about changes to our school calendar. And overall, we felt as if it was something that would be favorably received if it was going to help support meeting the safety and well-being of our students and staff, as well as helping to support our students instructionally.
We do want to reiterate and remind everyone that the question that was asked previously is why not later? And again, the feedback was that we did not, the overwhelming majority did not want to have to extend the school year at this point in time. And so this strategy allowed us to not have to actually extend the school year also.
Thank you, Dr. Ben. So looking at, and this is a little bit of a shift on our time schedules for our elementary school environment, our middle school environment, and our high school buildings. What we're proposing, and this is where we are today, based upon our preliminary scheduling process, is looking at our students arriving at the elementary buildings between 8:20 and 8:40. Which is a teeny bit earlier than they had in the past. Our teachers would still arrive at 8:15 and have their day through 3:45. At the middle and high school buildings, and remember, the shift of grades moves our 5th grade up to the middle environment. That would be students arriving at 7:20, between 7:20 and 7:40 in the morning. And then they would be, their time that they would be dismissed would be a teeny bit earlier at the tail end of the day, which would be approximately about 2:45. And you can see there that the teacher time is 7:15 to 2:45. And ultimately what this does across all 3 of our instructional environments is it provides a consistent time schedule for our teachers, as well as the allotment of time for our students.
The other impact and why this is important is another mitigation strategy. In the past, before COVID-19, students would go to large group areas and wait for the start of school. We can no longer have that situation exist if we're trying to implement COVID-19 strategies. So the idea is that teachers will have arrived at their assigned classroom and students will be broken down into smaller groups prior to the start of the school day, which is another mitigation strategy to avoid large groups gatherings that would have been in a traditional school format.
We've gone over a lot of the cyber costs, so I just want to highlight a couple of the bold-faced bullets here that for every student that we lose for an outside cyber institution in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it could be an average of $12,500 per student that we lose from district funding. For students with special needs, it could be upwards, if not more than $27,000 per student. And this is money that is taxpayer money within our district that does leave and does not help support the global Boyertown district. So as we think about providing and being flexible for our students to meet their needs, and really from an ever-changing world, because every day we're getting new information, we are really looking at trying to provide opportunities to maintain our students within the Boyertown Area School District. One of the things, I don't know, Dr. Ben, do we want to flip over to the other slide here?
Yep. And I do want to highlight and piggyback on your last comment. It is important to note that when you lose students, that doesn't mean that we get to drop the cost of doing business within our school district. In fact, in most school districts that had large cyber charter and charter school presence, it actually has resulted in the need for higher tax rates to try to sustain the district's functionality to serve the local students, because the state does not give you additional money to offset that cost. It is borne totally by the local jurisdiction for that cost factor. And to your point, let me bring up the other one.
Yeah, so one of the situations that feedback that we've received from many families is, one being that they want their children to be taught by Boyertown Area School District teachers, But they are also very concerned because, again, they go back to what happened in springtime. They want to have their students have synchronous learning. And what we were able to do is collect information from our local intermediate unit to really look at a chart that shows what the average of synchronous learning happens within some of the bigger charter academies that are out there. And I'm not going to go through each one. You can kind of look over it, but Connections Academy, K-12, and I'm just going to highlight Connections because that is one of the bigger cyber academies. But the amount of time that is spent on a daily basis for synchronous learning, K through 2 is 20 to 30 minutes per day, 3 through 5, 30 minutes per day, 6 through 8, 45 to 60 minutes a day, or 9 through 12, 60 plus minutes a day. So again, if you think about it, it is not that teachers are sitting or students are sitting in front of a computer for long periods of time with their teacher in front of them teaching. They are receiving a proportion of their educational process through synchronous learning. One of the major components that all virtual products, all virtual processes entail is the parent serves as a learning coach. And even for those of you that were participating from spring with your students, with our students, you know how important it is for that parent to be a coach that helps to support the educational process through the time, because many of our students, it would not be fair to think that they could stay engaged for those long periods of times without having some instructional support to go along with that. Finally, one of the items that we would really like to do, our goal is to possibly get it out as early as tomorrow, or hopefully by the end of the week, depending on how our guidance goes tonight. We want to put out a survey through Infinite Campus to really look at 3 specific areas. The first specific area is instructional model preference. The second area is the transportation needs, and finally the technology needs. So we want to, through Infinite Campus, we want to blast out a questionnaire that is going to be helping us to judge our numbers as to how many students are continue to be interested in attending through brick and mortar, how many of our students might be interested in our new virtual option, how many of our students might be interested in Berks Online Learning, how many might be interested in homeschooling, and so on. Transportation, you'll see shortly, but we're hoping to get this out as soon as possible so that we can really start having accurate projections for our classrooms. So the language that we would like to put into the survey to go out is providing options. And each one of the options, for instance, in our instructional model preference design, shows that this would be parents that would want their students to attend brick and mortar. And if you look at the 4 bullets that are beneath that, not only does it talk about the grades, but it also talks about what the model would look like at each one of those levels. So we're clear on parents knowing what that looks like. Option 2 would be for students if they want to attend the virtual learning opportunity that was discussed tonight. Next slide, Dr. Bedden. Option 3 is for parents that would want their students to attend the Berks Online Learning option that we discussed tonight. Option 4 would be that parents would want to go through the process of withdrawing their students from the Boyertown Area School District and look to homeschool their students for the upcoming school year. And finally, we wanted to definitely provide an option out there that is, I'm not able to determine right now because I might need more information. So we wanted to make sure that there was the actual scenarios that we are considering moving forward to really start collecting specific data from our families to make sure we can make informed decisions. Transportation options, I'll go through this relatively quickly. This is pretty straightforward. Option 1 is looking at, by the way, making sure, mask and face covering are all part of that process. So we wanted to reiterate that in this survey. Option 1 is that you're going to have your child ride transportation to and from school. Option 2 is just transportation to school, but you'll transport home. Option 3 is that you want to utilize BASD transportation from school, but not to school every day. Option 4, next slide, Dr. B. Option 4 is at this time, you're declining BASD transportation, because that's important for us to understand as well, because if you're not going to be putting your students on or your children on a bus, that impacts our numbers and we can act accordingly. And finally, the option 5 is that there is transportation to and from and picked up and dropped off at a daycare facility per our BASD guidelines. And actually, I forgot, option 6 is for our walkers. So we do have a lot of walkers to the Boyertown Area School District. Finally, and just to go over this one again relatively quickly, we have ordered the individual devices specifically for the elementary school level. I think it'll be a wonderful thing if we would be able to have those devices in by the start of our school year. So as we think about kicking off our school year, we want to make sure that we are in tune to families that would be in need of devices. And it really is going to be more so at that elementary school level. So we are asking in our multiple options here as to whether or not you have a device at home that your student has access to. Back to our spring plan, that was something that we had out there for all of our families that, we put the survey out there. This year, even though we might not have them available to us at the start of the school year, because as you can imagine, the devices across the Commonwealth are being ordered at a very rapid rate. We want to see who we can maybe prioritize devices that we can get to our families. And finally, the last slide, Dr. Bedden, there is really looking at additional technology input. We really want to learn as to whether or not you have dependable internet access to support virtual learning. As we look at streaming and as we look at the options that are out there, we want to gain information from our families, simply yes or simply no, to help support us knowing if we, moving forward, have the tools and devices in place to help support our virtual process.
One of the things I like to remind our parents and others who are watching, part of the challenge that we are all going to face as school district is access to resources. School districts across the country are all vying for some of the same resources, and quite honestly, the supply and demand don't match. Secondly, the challenge is that there has not been a commitment or dedication from state and federal level to support all these resources and changes. So again, there is I just want to be honest, there's no unlimited well of resources as we try to provide the tools and resources to meet the needs. So I'm saying this because I encourage you to do what you can to make sure that the quality of an education of a student should not depend on just the local taxpayer. This is about a student, no matter where they sit in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, no matter where they sit, whether you're in PA or whether you are in Mississippi, there's an inequity of opportunity and resources, and we need help. And that's not necessarily until recently, when someone finally has started bringing the conversation up about schools need to be deployed more resources to meet the needs in the fall. That had not been the conversation at the federal level. We absolutely want and hope that you would advocate for that to be a high priority with regards to our resources. We also continue to say in meetings that we are concerned that we need to be a high priority behind the healthcare workers once schools open to have access to cleaning materials and PPE equipment that has not necessarily been available as easily and readily as possible. When we try to deploy and support some of our most needy students, for example, with hotspots, they weren't available to schools. They got snatched up also sometimes by businesses that use them, and schools were left scrambling trying to find ways to support students who did not have access to those resources. So that is something that I hope, as the roughly 1,000 people on Facebook and the 628 on this Zoom would remember that we have resource challenges. We have funding challenges because this is actually created also financial stressor for many school districts, not only locally, but in the state as well as in the nation.
So to kind of bring everything together, what are the next steps for families? Because I know that's what everybody's concerned about. We are looking at hopefully getting this survey out to our families tomorrow. If all goes well, it'll be out tomorrow. The goal is to have the survey out and be live for approximately 1 week. So Wednesday, July 29th through Wednesday, August 5th, it'll be live. And we ask that you please complete a survey for each school-age child in your family that's currently enrolled in the Boyertown Area School District. Once we collect the information from our survey for that week time, we are going to be looking at creating our enrollment process for our BASD virtual learning. We already do have a learning process or a enrollment process for our Berks online learning, and I'm predicting that there could be many families who felt that they were opting for Berks online learning that may want to move to BASD virtual learning, and that is absolutely okay. That is not an issue, but we want to make sure we have procedures and practices in place to be able to accurately depict who is looking at and the options that are available and what they want to enroll their students in. So that's a big component, as well as homeschooling. Homeschooling has a whole other process to enroll that involves withdrawing from the Boyertown Area School District and moving into the homeschooling platform. And we have a whole web page dedicated for the homeschooling process. One element on the slide is just talking that we need to make sure that if students are new to the district, they must first enroll in the Boyertown Area School District, and all of those directions are on our website to help support that process. And then once they do enroll, then we can move forward with what that selection process is going to be. Because until you officially enroll and have all those procedures, protocols, and things in place to help, officially be a member of the Boyertown Area School District community, we cannot take into consideration the other options. And finally, the last slide that we have for tonight is just thinking about this truly is an ever-changing process. To Dr. Bedden's point, I think every day we get new information, and it's imperative and so important for all of us to continue to keep the health and safety and the well-being of our students and staff at the forefront of our decision-making process. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "The only thing that is constant is change." And I really think that when it's kind of cliche, but when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. We have to make a new lemonade process here to help support our students. And I think as we collaboratively work together to do this, all will be well, and we will do what's best with the tools we're given to help support our students and families.
Mr. Foose? And I just want to remind the audience, I see people raising hands. This is a actual school board meeting. The board receives comments in a structured fashion, which was either comment period number 1 or comment for those things that are on the agenda and comment period number 2. There is no way that we could accommodate also 1,600 people possibly asking questions, which is what we actually have viewing us right now. I do want to remind those on Facebook that of the expectations with civility on that platform. It is not something that is required. The district is trying to be much more inclusive in making it the meetings accessible, but we also have students who are online too. So I would like to ask that we make sure that we are appropriate on Facebook at the same time. Mr. Foose?
First, thank you for that presentation. So this is an informational update, and at this time, we're opening it up to questions. So I have right now Ms. McWhirter and Ms. Hogan in the queue.
Have my hand up.
And I will add Ms. Deeroff then to that.
I also can't put my hand up, Brandon.
All right. So
I also have a question, Brandon.
Okay, so we're going to go Ms. McWhirter, Ms. Hogan, Ms. Deeroff, Mr. Brophy, and then Mr. Updegrove.
And then I'll go last, Brandon, because I can't do my hand. I'm on my iPad. I don't know why. It's different.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and write this down while Ms. McWhirter gets started.
All right, I have several questions, and these were things that came to me while you were presenting, Mr. Stout, which that was an excellent presentation. It was really helpful. So I realize I have a lot of questions, and I don't expect answers to all of them tonight. Just answer what you can, and try later, get back to me later. So I noticed on the school calendar that all of our professional learning has been front-loaded. Is that correct? To the beginning of the year?
That is correct. One thing that's not on the calendar is that we have 2 days in August 19th and August 20th. So when you add those 2 days for professional learning, as well as the 5 days with the calendar shift, we also provide for our teachers administratively directed hours, which is up to 12 hours. So if you really put it all together and teachers utilize the full amount of time, they'd have the 5 days with the calendar change, the 2 days that were already part of the schedule, and then an extra 12 hours that they can do for project-oriented kinds of work that we've always had in our system.
Okay, so during the school year, there really won't be any professional workshop days.
No, we have professional learning days that are set into our schedule that obviously will be taking on a different look than what they've taken in the past to help support and accommodate. One of the days, in the latter part of September is a day that we would be potentially looking at, following up on work that is happening and really providing feedback to our teachers and helping to support what are we learning from the processes that are in place.
All right. My next question is for Mr. Drescher. If he is able to answer. If he's not, that's okay. Regarding, I'm assuming he's going to be the one to answer this. PPE equipment and cleaning supplies, hand sanitizers and soap. Do we have enough for the start of the year? And how much do we have to get us through the year? How far out do you predict what we? Because I know that it was previously mentioned that these were in short supply.
I'm fairly confident that we have enough. I'm not so sure about the PPE because it depends on what happens. And if we have an average, and I don't even know if that's a correct word to use, but chemical wise, I think we're going to be good. Tools to get the cleaning done in a way that we haven't done before, meaning quickly. I think we can do that. I think that the guys are ready for it. PPE is my biggest concern because like Dr. Bedin was saying, the hospitals are getting stuff first and then we're kind of left to the wind. I'm working with the BCIU and all the directors there. We're kind of getting together and purchasing things as a group by the truckload, if you can believe that.
Yes.
We're having some success, but not as good as we would like to see. But I'm confident that we'll be okay.
All right. I just might mention being from the science world, some of the scientific. At my job, I still can continue to get gloves and other PPE. You might want to check into some of the scientific suppliers for gloves or whatever PPE you're looking for, since they've always done that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Back to Mr. Stout or Dr. Bedin. So the survey that's going out, how many people are you expecting to actually answer this? And are you going to be pursuing answers from those who don't or can't answer it?
One of the celebrations that we believe Infinite Campus is going to allow us to do, this is the first time we're going to use the survey feature in Infinite Campus. But our understanding is that when we blast the survey out, again, hopefully tomorrow, that for parents who respond, they kind of get taken off the list that they've responded. And those who don't respond, we can re-blast the survey out to those who did not respond. So that's a feature that the survey feature in the environment that should allow us to hopefully just keep drilling down to get information. But what we really need to do once we collect the information is to have this official enrollment, and that's the term I'm using, enrollment process, to know what specific students are going to be picking what option that's out there.
I want to be clear to some people who may be watching the first time that This is not the first time we surveyed. We had a professional company that's nationally recognized do the first one. Their recommendation was, at this point, once we know what we're doing and a plan is adopted, to drill down and use that information to help facilitate the planning on the system. So we continually get questions or concerns about surveying, but at the same time, we're trying to be inclusive and get input to help make data-driven decisions. So to your question, Ms. McWhirter, about how many, we hope everyone will respond so we get as close to real numbers as possible. But we also want to recognize and publicly state, as I watch sometimes with some of the concerns from parents in the community, that system doesn't work if the information is not up to date. And if they, so they have a concern with regards to making sure that they're receiving the communication, which is our student information system. That is where we access and get to reach out to our parents. Please be proactive and let us know or reach out to make sure that we have, if you've not received any of the previous communications, so that we can make sure that is done. It's going to be out there for like approximately a week. So it's going to be blasted out tomorrow. So I would say that if you don't see something tomorrow or the day after, you might want to reach out so that we can check and make sure that the information in the system is there, and or in some cases we found where certain boxes were checked that limited the communication being received by the parents.
Thank you. So my next question, this is probably the one that I really don't expect an answer to tonight. You mentioned University of Georgia and their risk assessment. Is anybody out there gathering the longer term effects of the coronavirus, like such a shortness of breath? So after, the kids have no, students and teachers have no fever for 3 days, and they come back to school, but they're still going to have shortness of breath. Is this part of the safety training that we're going to be giving our teachers as to recognize symptoms that are problematic? And also, I know we have AEDs in all of the schools, again, making sure that everybody knows where they are and how to use them, because they actually are very easy to use. So that was just one thought that I had while I was doing this, sitting here listening.
Well, I can answer your question broadly. And again, as you know, you receive a lot of communication late at night from me as I'm catching up on what's happening. I feel like my life in the evenings is nothing but looking at what's happening. But what they're finding is the answer is they're drilling down more on what's happening with students and the true impact. For instance, they have now changed course with regards to drilling down and segmenting it from 0 to 10 and above 10, and what that means for students. In fact, the students above 10, I believe, or 10 and up, actually have been found to be just as likely to carry and expose adults to the virus than they originally thought, than children who are much younger. And that some of the symptoms that while they may not be necessarily as ill, they are carrying, obviously, the virus, the older kids, that, again, why we try to balance this decision making, that it's not just about students, it's about the adults in our buildings also that we're trying to protect. As far as what they're finding yet, I can't answer that, other than they did come out with one research that said that there are students who seem to have overcome the COVID-19 symptoms, and then they reoccurred later in them. So that's one thing that we have received. But as far as the long-term effects of them carrying on, the best I've seen is that there are mitigating circumstances that are associated with individual health of the student. And I think, again, my sympathies and support for the parent that spoke earlier, but she kind of gave a picture of this today, what can happen with students. And we do have students that have high risk situations that go to our schools. So it is a concern for us, which is why we're trying to work feverishly to make sure that we have options for those students to not feel totally isolated from their peers, but also to have access to teaching and learning if they have to stay home because of medical reasons.
And then
That's the best I can give you without being a scientist or a medical profession, and it's just from reading.
that's about what I've read too, but I just didn't know if there was more information out there. I mean, that's something I can look up myself. And then this is my last question. If there's one elementary school that it seems more populated than all of the others, I mean, you mentioned 75% that they were at, and if there's one that's at like 80 or 90%, does it make sense to send the 4th grade to the middle school?
We don't have anyone, we only have, again, the average is 75%. The highest we have is 2 buildings. They have no one at above 80% when I did the calculations. And remember, those calculations are if every kid was still in attendance based on the projections. Those numbers actually could be lower, which is why we're trying to get the survey to get truly who is going to be there. All we can do right now is project out based on the assumption that all of our kids that were enrolled in our district are rolling over to the next grade, which honestly, that's probably not the case right now. So we expect possibly those numbers to actually drop. We also are thinking that what we're rolling out with the virtual option, for lack of a better term, live streaming, that may actually decrease some of the numbers, because we do know there's a facet of parents there who are still uncomfortable with their children coming, even in a hybrid model, and may choose to actually say that I want my child to stay home. And we're trying to make sure we equip our teachers that they can actually reach those students who are home while they're teaching. You could have a class of 25 and maybe 15 of them show up and 10 decide that they're going to be at home, and they can still see and receive the lesson from the teacher. We want to be clear to parents that when you do virtual, the teacher's not standing up at a whole period teaching for 45 minutes. They do intros, they give assignments to students, and so it's not that whole thing. And just like we're gonna have mass breaks, we're gonna have hygiene breaks that are built in. So students sitting at home have breaks at those same times. Also, obviously, when students do lunch, you have lunch break. So teachers may incorporate, for lack of a better term, the typical brain breaks that have to happen. So there will be a number of opportunities where they break up the lessons for opportunity. So it's not just a sage on the stage the entire time, and no teacher could sustain that model. And that's not what exists anyway right now. So we're trying to make sure that our teachers we're taking their teaching and making it available virtually also now.
All right. Thank you very much again, Mr. Stout. That was an excellent presentation, and I am done with my questions.
All right, I'm going to go through the list of names again, just for everyone. So I have Ms. Hogan next, followed by Ms. Deeroff, Mr. Brophy, Mr. Updegrove, Ms. Denon, and then Ms. Nyman. So Ms. Hogan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Foose. Thank you, Mr. Stout, for the presentation. I agree, it was excellent. I do have just a few questions. I want to clarify that the survey that's going to be sent out will be sent out after tonight's vote. So it's really just asking parents which of the approved choices they are interested in, correct?
Yeah, Mrs. Hogan, the language that you saw in the presentation tonight is the language, the exact language that we would like to have on the survey. So if we have the approval to move forward with the plans, the goal is that the survey will go as presented tonight.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And then
let me just say, Mrs. Hogan, sorry to cut you off. We were going to send a survey out a couple weeks ago, just so you were aware, but just so we wanted to make sure we were all on the same page, and we didn't want to present options that aren't the actual options. We want to get the ability to drill down to the data the best we can.
I appreciate that, and I think parents would appreciate it as well. So we're being asked to vote on the adjusted scaffolded plan tonight. Is that correct?
What you really don't. That's why we try to explain at the beginning. The scaffolding plan model is what you're voting on. We wanted to make you aware that we may have to modify that actual 5-day model to what you saw. But what the board votes on is the actual health and safety plan. How we deliver it is not a vote. But we wanted to make you aware and give us feedback, because ultimately, again, the feedback we've gotten from teachers and working with the association, this was a tweak we needed to make, and we didn't want to not show that to you, and then you get bombarded with questions or calls and was not aware of it. So this is the time to share comments or thoughts about that, but you actually vote on the health and safety plan, which is the scaffolding hybrid model we're talking about. How we deliver it, we're trying to keep the board aware of how we're delivering it. And if that slight tweak, we wanted you to be aware of and not blindsided and not tell you about that if we have to move forward with it. We do have a lot of concern that has been raised with regards to, again, contact time and comfort with also having time to actually do professional collaboration with virtual lesson planning, as well as time that they want maybe to drill down and meet with students who may be needing additional help. So that's what that model, that additional day would have and be available.
Okay, I understand better now, and I appreciate the clarification. And then if, say, for example, Gilbertsville Elementary, instead of being 75% full, was like 40% full because a large amount of parents had chosen another option other than in person. And some of our other elementaries were more full. Would we be shifting students around from their home schools to create smaller class sizes and more distancing options, or would that not happen?
Well, the first thing is, that part of our challenge is economically. So for example, we didn't do an AM and a PM session because financially it would have just devastated our budget. We could not run 4 runs with the cost factor of our buses. So for example, so the first strategy would be to redeploy teachers to those other schools to break down the class sizes in that particular school they're already assigned to get smaller numbers. So that would be the first strategy before we say we're going to move students. If we have the capability of a student being able to go somewhere else and to manage it within the, again, limited resources, then that could be a strategy. But the first one is not to disrupt the student again, but redeploy the teachers to where the kids are.
Okay, that makes sense, and I appreciate it. And then finally, the last question I have is just about technology. So for parents who are choosing the Berks online option, are they also provided with technology like a computer or whatnot?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mrs. Hogan. They always have been provided with a technology, a device. They also receive a stipend that goes along for internet connectivity that is very consistent with what the outside cyber platforms provide.
Oh, thank you. That's super helpful. And then if a parent's choosing to homeschool, then we don't have to provide them any technology. Is that correct?
Exactly. That is and I used to be the homeschool coordinator for the district as well. So I'm a little versed in it, but it's been a few years. But typically what happens there is the parents have to get an affidavit signed that they are agreeing to be the instructional provider for the students. And at that particular time, they take on those responsibilities. They have to report back to the district whether goals and objectives were met. But we can provide some curricular resources for them. But as far as technology and pieces like that, we do not.
Okay, that concludes my questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, next we have Ms. Steeroff.
I just have 2 quick questions. On the BCTC, if the students are going there, do we have transportation like normal for there? And would they be going like every day, or maybe I missed it?
Yeah, Mrs. Deeroff, the goal is to have our BCTC students attend. We're working on the logistics of what that would look like, but transportation would be provided. We're just trying to figure out what the actual details of that, because BCTC right now is also creating their schedule for what instruction is going to look like in that environment. So we're working in collaboration with them.
Okay, the other question.
Ms. Deeroff, before you go to your next question is, that also influenced why we had to limit how much we could change the secondary start time, because we did not want to create a situation where we would limit our students to have access to BCTC. So that played a factor in why we had to have the times you saw earlier also.
Those students arrive at BASH and they are pretty much hopping on that BCTC bus very quickly. So there's not a lot of flexibility with that bus schedule.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had, like in Earl Township, I know you don't have much choice for the internet. Windstream is here and they're horrible, but most of it's satellite. Is that going to be a problem?
It should not. For the most part, anyone who has connectivity and has is able to stream a video in some capacity with respect to their internet service should have service that is consistent with what would be enough to be supported in this process.
I have to agree with Ms. Deeroff that internet service providers in Earl Township are limited. Although I did see Comcast did cover parts of Earl, but even when you say that you can download a video or stream a video, it is not always the case.
That's true. Takes a long time.
Mrs. Deeroff, let me add something to your question. We as a district, and Mr. Ainelli's on and can speak to this if need be, but we as a district also have that potential issue. And I say that because if you think of all the streaming that would be coming from our school environment, it's going to put an incredible drain on the bandwidth. So we as a district over the past year have been proactive and have upgraded our bandwidth and are looking from Mr. Ainelli's perspective, feel that we're going to be at a bandwidth that's going to be appropriate to support the process. And if we need to, it's literally just a switch to upgrade, which would have a cost with it. But we feel with all of the proactive scenarios that the school board has allowed as far as technology upgrades and those pieces, we should be in a good place for what needs to happen for success.
Okay, so what we're voting on tonight is the plan that we're going to use, correct? Or we're going to, the plan that administration is presenting to us is the one that we're going to be voting on tonight.
Yeah, the health and safety plan, that's the next item that you received earlier, that document, yes. That's attached to the agenda. That was predominantly pretty much what you received. It's other than state mandates, nothing has really changed in it. We highlighted the one tweak tonight to make you aware that we may have to go to the 4-1 model versus 5 days completely in the hybrid model.
All right, that's all the questions I have. But before we vote, I would like to make a statement if I could. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify for everyone, the presentation we just saw was informational. There will be another presentation, and after that, there will be that will be a vote of either to accept or reject. Next, we have Mr. Brophy.
Okay, Mr. Stout, thank you for the presentation on what our future could look like. I think it's an exciting thing to be able to start blending cyber with brick and mortar schools. I think that's got a lot of positive things to it. And I think that that's an exciting way to go. So I thank you for that. I guess some of my questions I think have already been answered. So what we saw tonight is informational, which is great. It's not something we're voting on, which is I was a little concerned about that. And the second part is the change we saw to 4 days is not part of what we're voting on tonight. You'll come back to us with that if that becomes a question. Mike, Mr. Stout?
Yeah, I'm going to let Dr. Bedden reply to that one.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I don't, go ahead.
It's just a quick question, is that 4 days is not part of what we're voting on tonight. That 4 days, if you want to change it to 4 days, you'll be coming back to ask us about that. Is that correct?
If that's what the board wants, I will tell you that we don't recommend that, because as things get worse, the whole plan that you saw is supposed to be fluid, that we're able to move. But again, that's why we did not, we felt like because we gave you a original plan that showed 5 days, and the data that we're receiving and the changes that are happening, we wanted to make you aware because we already had a meeting scheduled to do that. So we wanted to be transparent.
Okay.
And
And that's fine.
concerns from the board with the fact that that's an option that we may need to consider as we launch the plan for the start of the school year.
Yeah, and that's fine, because I wouldn't want to see us to go back through another meeting to make a change like that. But that's, especially if you feel you need to do that. So you won't be coming back for that. You'll just make the change if it's required.
Well, but we would definitely, as we said in this whole process, you would know before we flip the switch. So it wouldn't be necessarily coming back to revote, but we would make the board aware that we're making that switch to that 4-1 situation. So you wouldn't be totally like unaware that it's happening. But we, again, looking at the data we're receiving, and then working with the association and feedback we've gotten, because we're also very concerned that we have to hold on to our teachers. And that was some significant feedback that we received from them as we try to balance the needs of our parents and community with making sure that we are stabilizing our teaching force with their willingness to return and feel somewhat safe. Obviously, we can't guarantee anything, but we're trying to balance the two, sometimes not always same interests.
Okay, and that's fine. Thank you very much.
Mr. Brophy, just on top of that, one of the things we wanted to really try to be consistent was with this data collection survey. We wanted to put out what those potential options are so that we can be as clear and upfront with families so that they know what those options are. Because as we were projecting the survey and we're looking at dates, I was a little shocked that, you know, a week from Wednesday is the first week of August, and it was a little scary, to be honest.
Yeah, and that was my concern. We're getting so close to school at this point that I don't want to have to, you know, try and rush through things and keep coming back. Let's just get this moving on and so you guys can get everything and get us back into school. Thanks.
You're spot on. You know, and if it gets better, you know, we'll come back and let you know a heads up that we can move the other way. If it gets worse, you know, we're concerned, as one of your colleagues sent an email that, and most people wondering, we may have to go 100% virtual. That could get triggered if the escalation continues. Again, the whole point was that we're trying to build a plan that allows us to move based on the data and maintain safe and healthy measures within the system that we put in front of you.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, I'm just going to run through the names again real quick. Next, I have Mr. Updegrove, followed by Ms. Denon, then Ms. Nyman, and then I've added Mr. Hemingway. So Mr. Updegrove.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Staff, for that presentation. It was very informal. One of my questions is, what are the guidelines you've been using for the class sizes?
For class size, we've been using our regular Boyertown class size practices that we put in place from the CDC and what they're looking at social distancing. It's more about the spacing of our students and trying to adhere to what those requirements are. Ultimately, when the governor made his proclamation a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, to the 25 in groups, he quickly, when asking for feedback from how does that impact schools, it was not a specific classroom requirement. They fall back to that distancing between desks. That's why we tried to present tonight some pictures of what that actually looks like in practice. Our principal team has worked diligently moving desks around, and I have some pictures of some very tall principals sitting in these spaces and getting into some debates as to what is actually 4 feet, what's actually 5 feet, what's actually 6 feet. You know, when you're talking some 6 feet individuals, it really, you know, we are the best tile counters on the floor because our tiles are 1 foot by 1 foot, and it really has turned into a math project in this whole endeavor.
Okay, my other question is, as far as pickup times and drop-off times, is that going to be something that will change according to how the things are going, or is it pretty much standard the way you have it set up?
Yeah, Christine's on the call. I'll speak, Christine, and if there's something to add, please do so. With the runs with the elementary school level, the middle level, and high school level, they are all contingent on one another. And as we spoke earlier, when you make an adjustment on one end of the bus run, it definitely has an impact on the other end. So we have to be super careful with that. We tried to maintain the parameters of what the normal schedule for the day looked like, but then just adjust them by the same amount on the other end. So the bus runs themselves will be different times than what typically had happened, but the overall adjustment of global time should only be an adjustment on each end. The bus runs themselves will run every day. It's just a matter of what students they actually pick up who are going to be attending on those days in those particular buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Christine, did you have anything to add? I saw you unmuted there.
No, everything you said was correct. The buses will run 5 days a week.
Right.
Who's going to attend the buses will be depending on the age group or the grades.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Sorry, would somebody mind just repeating? I wasn't able to hear what Ms. Batten just added.
She said that the bus runs will function 5 days a week. They will just be adjusting to what the adjustment in the overall schedule for the buildings will be. Overall, we try to maintain that schedule to be very consistent, just modified by plus or minus 5 to 10 minutes on each end of the day.
Thank you for that.
I do want to highlight for the board that one of the outstanding challenges that we still have with transportation is our non-Boyertown required transportation. And I think Mr. Sultanic can speak more to this, but they set their schedule. And while we try to collaborate, they don't have to do what we tell them we want to do. So that is a unresolved question that Christine is continuing to work on and should communicate with them. So the other side of why we're trying to establish a schedule of our school is those who will be collaborative, we need to tell them, here's what we're going to look like, which may help them align with us as best possible. But I think, if I remember correctly from my check of Mr. Sultanic, they don't have to get in line with us. Mr. Sultanic, if I remember correctly.
You remember correctly, but I don't want to advertise that so much.
So that I just want to know the board that with the transportation question, that may be a challenge that we may be hit with later.
All right, next we have Ms. Denon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Foos, and thank you, Mr. Stout, for that presentation. It was really informative, and most of my questions, or several of my questions, have been answered. One was around what we're voting on in terms of we're really voting on the health and safety plan, and the fact that it's going to be scaffolding plan, and then some of the details around that are going to be rather fluid. And that's not something we have to vote on tonight, like whether it's going to be a 4-day or a 5-day. So I just want to reiterate, I understand that correctly.
Correct.
Okay. The second question is around PPE. So I'm assuming like we're talking about masks and thermometers and that kind of stuff. So are we expected, when it comes to PPE, are we expected to make sure we have in stock a mask for every child, or are they expected to bring them from home?
No, we are not expected to have a mask for every child. Will we have some extras on hand to address issues? But there's no way that we could actually sustain a model of potentially almost 7,000 masks for children. Because one of our health and safety plan requirements in the mitigation strategy that was put out by the health department was to require each student and staff member to always have a mask with them and present. Now, obviously, we have to have, minor hospital grade, inexpensive masks. If so, and people are human, things will happen. So we do have, and Mayor Beth has ordered some of those. I think one of the comments earlier read with a question was about the face shields. So I'll answer that. The face shields are allowable by the Commonwealth's order. So you can, and I use a face shield at work sometimes when I'm shorter than 6 feet, but still maybe 4 to 3 in a meeting, because it does add a layer of protection, but it allows people to hear me more clearly sometimes than when I'm trying to talk with a mask on. So those are allowable, but I will be transparent. The commissioner in Montgomery County, who's a physician who attends the meetings that I attend in Montgomery County, has been very clear, and this has been said, they're not as safe as the mask. So that's just a fact, but they are acceptable, and they are allowed to be used, especially in cases where we have to have we have students or other concerns with the mask being a problem. There are exceptions identified already in the Pennsylvania Department order that allows us, based on identified issues, that a student can be allowed to have a modification to a mask. So we do have that process. And of course, you know, some of our special needs students will need accommodations depending on the disability that they may have.
Okay. So, and then my other quick question was, can you just explain, is it why we're not going to be doing that quick temperature check when these kids get off the bus? Is it cost prohibitive? Is it time prohibitive? You know, I guess I'm a little bit concerned that, you know, with the rush of a school day, the students who come back, you know, the parents may forget to take a temperature or whatever, or do we not deem that as like a real necessary thing?
It actually was as actually articulated by American Academy of Pediatrics, who actually said what we already knew. It has logistical nightmares associated with it, and it has a responsibility level that has some privacy issues and other issues associated with it. So for example, because of our relationship with one of the bus companies and my past interaction with them, they wanted to install temperature readers on our bus. The question we asked of them is, so what happens when we have a student who's at a bus stop and we get a reaction to it, but there's no adult for them to go home to? What happens when that goes off in public? And you know, and it could be just a regular temperature, it has nothing to do with COVID. Right. So they just had all kinds of privacy and management issues that we felt like, for example, we were putting our drivers, bus drivers, in a very difficult decision-making situation that just had all kinds of potential concerns associated with it. And we did not, as an administration, feel comfortable having that situation occur at a bus stop. As far as in school, it's a logistical nightmare problem with regards to potentially 500 different people being involved in that process.
Okay, thank you for that.
We're not the only district that has taken this model and applied it. There are several in Berks and several in Montgomery who are using the same self-implementation process. What the AP said, though, is the most effective thing we can do is be very quick in our response to remove an adult or a student to the isolation room that starts exhibiting symptoms. That is actually one of the more effective strategies than just depending on a temperature check.
Okay. So my other question is, it seems like, you know, one of the big pieces of this puzzle is what the parents are actually going to want to do, and what percentage of parents feel comfortable now that we have a little bit better of a virtual learning, what we're going to be, you know, whether or not they're going to send their children back. So I guess we have to wait to find that piece out before we go forward with some other decisions. So I appreciate that. Hopefully that survey will go out tomorrow, and I hope, you know, every parent does fill it out. But my one question is, are we also going to be surveying the teachers, or I guess we would have to wait to see how many kids are coming back to see their comfort level in coming back to school and teaching in the classroom? And secondly, if the survey comes back that there's not going to be a lot of students, would we have to furlough teachers, or would they be then maybe doing the virtual teaching? So if a teacher doesn't feel comfortable going into a classroom, would we pull them to maybe just do the virtual, the synchronous learning, or is that something we're not considering or thought about yet?
I can speak to that. We're considering all possibilities in this scenario. One of the I'm going to flip your question a little bit in the sense that our concern is, looking at class sizes with respect to classroom space. So principals, to my point earlier, have been working diligently on that process. Depending on the space available in the buildings, we have looked at utilizing some of our ESSER grant funds, one-time funds. We've at least put a line item in to potentially bring some teachers in to help support to mitigate those class size ratios when we have areas that aren't able to maintain that 3 to 6 feet ratio. So we're looking at really, trying to support everyone the best we can and thinking about, using resources. I can't imagine that we'd need to lose teachers in the process with respect to, you said the term furlough. I'm more worried on the other end that we're going to need more people to help support this process that's in place. We decided at this particular time to move ahead with the synchronistic virtual platform rather than designating individual teachers, because not knowing what our data points are from a student perspective, that could be difficult based upon levels of certification, buildings, things such as that. But I'll say that, a consideration for that is not out of the realm if we do, in fact, have to really think outside the box to help support whatever we're doing.
Okay, so those are all kind of fluid things and decisions that could be made down the line once we get more information, basically. Okay.
If I may try to clarify something, and I recognize that it is a sensitive issue, but the mere fact that an employee is uncomfortable to return to work is not the basis for somebody being excused from coming to work. There are specific reasons, and there's a whole body of requirements that have now evolved, and actually our own teachers union recognizes that you can't, as an employee, simply tell your employer, I'm uncomfortable coming back to work. You need to have a medical basis for making that assertion and the like. So I don't want people to have the misapprehension that simply because somebody says that, we're going to try to accommodate that. Yes, we want to have happy and safe employees, but we will only have so many slots for virtual programming if we have a hybrid setup. And one of the challenges, admittedly, of doing this is trying to address how staff gets placed appropriately and on a certified basis. So I just want to be careful once we go into that realm. That is going to be one of our great challenges administratively in delivering an educational program based upon those kinds of issues. And these are not just Boyertown issues. These are regional issues and national issues that districts are facing right now.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Again, I don't think about all the legalities of some of this stuff, so thanks for
and the second issue I just want to make clear that most people don't understand, unlike other positions, there is actually a provision in the school code dating back to 1949 where if a school building is closed because of a contagious disease, teachers are guaranteed their pay regardless of what happens. That is not true for any other job classification in the school district, including administrators. So You're
Don't need
venturing.
to go there. I just was asking a general question.
Okay, no, but you're going into an area of great complexity and sensitivity.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I guess the other questions actually have been answered. So thank you. That's all I have.
All right, next we have Ms. Nyman. I believe she was having trouble earlier being taken off mute. If someone could please take her off mute.
Let me see if it will allow me to do it for her. Bear with me, Ms. Nyman, I gotta find you with so many people. Okay, try now, Ms. Nyman.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions. I think a lot of the parents are confused as to what the options are at this point, but we'll go from there later, I guess. One of my concerns is with the graduating class we just had and the upcoming graduating students, what is this doing to their credits to graduate?
From their transcript perspective, Ms. Nyman, that what took place from last year, and as we move forward with this year, we will, to the point that you and I, had a little discussion last week about the grading process. The credits would still be part of their count, so that would not impact them at all.
So what happened this past year, everybody that graduated had the amount of credits they needed to without having to change anything because of the COVID.
There were definitely grading modifications based upon where we were, Ms. Nyman, but overall from the official credit count, the students that did meet that credit count requirement to graduate did so legitimately.
And that will have no effect on our graduating class this year?
And according to what we were proposing in place, unless something incredibly I can't even, what happened in March was something we weren't anticipating. Unless something really, really out there would happen, the goal is as we move forward with our instructional practices, the accountability from the credit perspective will be, right aligned with it.
Okay. And so we are not technically voting on anything tonight. This is just options again.
No, you're voting on the health and safety plan as the next item. This was updating you on the current status of the instructional models that we were putting in place, not this item. The next item, as communicated, July 28th was the vote on the health and safety plan that has been presented previously for approval, because we really have to now drill down to the parents about which option they really are going to pursue so that we can do scheduling and enrollment and try to get transportation, all those things scheduled. We also need to prepare teachers to know what they're actually going to be doing and prepare for, which is to delay this any further would be catastrophic for our district at this point. And it's actually going to hurt us because parents are really looking for a decision of what the plan is that we're going to offer so they can decide whether or not to stay in our district or make other choices. So you're voting on two key provisions. The one is the health and safety plan, which is the next item. And then you have to vote on a resolution that you received also last week that allows the virtual piece to count and still meet the 180-day requirement that we have to meet in attendance requirements by declaring the state of emergency.
Okay, I guess everybody's just confused because somebody texted me that they thought this was the plan that was going into effect now. So I just want to make that clear that this is not the plan that's going into effect.
No, this is, when you say the plan, what plan are you talking about when you say the plan?
Well, 4 days for grade school.
As Mr. Brophy asked the question earlier, as we continue to look at the data, we may have to go to the 4-1, we said, to also stabilize our teaching force. So we wanted you to know that it may be the 5-day or the 4-1.
Oh, that's gonna hurt a lot of the people that have to work. We
And
have
if we don't, okay. And that's why we wanted you to let you know that we also got a lot of people who are actually concerned about the mitigation strategy, which is why when you got emails from parents who said, why are we not considering a 3-2? We believe that that would actually also be detrimental to the community because of what you're just pointing out. But we also trying to make sure that we have as many staff available to teach children and be there and want to do a good job. Staff need to have time also to deliver the quality instruction, since we're implementing this option of potentially full live streaming and virtual within our system. It's a no-win situation, Ms. Nyman. We're trying to strike a balance to meet the needs of both teachers and our parents and our students.
And I understand it's a no-win situation. Regardless of what we do, somebody's not going to be happy with our decision tonight. Somebody's not going to be happy with our vote tonight. And there are families out there that have to work. They have to find somebody, if their kids are going to be home, they have to find somebody to take care of them because they have to be at work or they'll lose their job. It's that simple. And, you know, some people don't have families around here. They're looking for their children to be in school 5 days a week. And I don't know, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place right now. Thank you.
All right, next we have Mr. Hemingway.
Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. After listening to all the comments, I have many comments that I want to make, but I don't necessarily think that they are necessary at this point. I think as a board, we've ensured that we have the right people in the right places, and we need to trust their decisions, their direction, and this board, from what I see, we want to be involved, but we don't want to be in the way. So that's where it's tough. You have a board that really wants to be involved in some of the decisions that are being made, but we also need to learn to trust those who we ensured are in these positions to make the right decisions. I had a lot that I wanted to say, but I'm not going to. I basically, at this point, want to agree and trust that those that we have ensured to be in the decision-making process have the liberty to do what they know is best. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I'd like to make a motion to accept that plan. But I think it would be fair to make the motion, and I'm hoping Mr. Satanic can help me on this. I like it to be known that it's with the understanding that this plan is an evolving plan daily. We need to let our administration and our experts be flexible. It's a working document to remain flexible as the current conditions fluctuate. So I'm comfortable and confident in their decisions. I just ask that they keep us in tune, keep us involved, and I trust them. I think the community is in a good position. We've set ourselves up for success. So I would like to make the official motion to accept this plan under those conditions, that it is an evolving document, and give them the flexibility to make the decisions without us. So, Mr. Satanic, I'm asking for your help on this one.
Okay, so it's a motion to approve the health and safety plan. Are we also approving the resolution at the same time?
Well, my statement goes for both.
I'm asking Dr. Bedden that question.
Yes.
The health and safety plan is the next agenda item, and the resolution is a part of the consent agenda.
Okay, so
my statement stands true for both.
Okay. So essentially, we're just approving, the only thing that's the next item on the agenda, the motion to approve the health and safety plan, subject to granting authority to the school district administration to make reasonable modifications to the plan to reflect changing dates and requirements prior to the implementation of school as presented.
Yes.
And don't ask me to repeat it.
Does that need a second?
Yeah, if there's a motion, it would require a second to.
Hogan
Yeah.
seconds.
Right. So we do have a motion and a second. So
Mr. Foose?
yes.
Why would we do that now until we get to the actual agenda item that comes up in the next portion of this? We're taking this out of order.
Mhm.
I don't think that's proper meeting etiquette. I understand what Mr. Hemingway wants, but I don't think that's the proper way to do about it. I think we have to go to the next segment and actually bring it up and move forward on it there.
I believe with a motion and a second, we would need to have discussion and vote on that since there was a motion and a second, but it's on the specific motion, which wouldn't preclude us from, if that is not approved, to continue on as we would as the agenda is presented.
Would that preclude our comments on the proposal?
Well, essentially, we'd have comments. I mean, Mr. Sultanic might better be able to answer this question, but my understanding would be, since we have a motion and a second, that now we would enter into, we would have to have a public comment period, possibly, and then also have our own comment period and Q&A. My personal, just to kind of give my indication.
Well, let me just clarify something.
Sure.
Okay. We have two public, I'm talking now about public comment.
Right.
That item was on the agenda.
Okay, you're right, correct, yeah.
So the public did have an opportunity to comment in the first public comment period. So there's no additional public comment that's necessary as the result of this motion, which is only a minor modification of where it is. And after this discussion, we would have been discussing the health and safety plan anyway. There was not going to be another presentation on it. Is that correct?
Correct.
So this is just advancing to the next item on the agenda. Obviously, if you don't want to do it right now, you could do a motion to table, I guess, to stop it from being discussed and addressed right now. But literally after that motion, you're going to get a new motion on the table anyway to reflect where it is.
So in essence, we're just pulling it forward. The motion
Yes.
will go, and then we'll have board comments on it, and then go.
You'll have board comment right now that on this motion, right?
That's
Yes.
fine.
And yeah, if there was any new information, I was going to suggest that my preference would be to hear that information first. But since we just heard since that's not the case, then I think proceeding to moving things along is probably not a bad idea at 9:45. So I'd be happy to move to comments and questions on the next topic. As we already have a motion and a second on the tables.
Mr. Foose.
Sorry, let me just see. So right now there are no names nobody has a hand raised. So it sounds like Ms. Denon is probably requesting to speak, and then does anyone else want to get in the queue?
So just to clarify, I think I understand what Mr. Hemingway was saying and Mr. Brophy. So Mr. Hemingway basically was saying that he wants to move on from the COVID-19 instructional plan update, and he wants to go right to the approval of the health and safety plan. But I think that the administration, before we vote to approve the health and safety plan, which is the vote that we need to take in the end, the administration wants to go through it with us. Is that
No,
am I correct there?
No.
Okay.
the nuts and bolts of how we're going to implement it, that's what you got to make you aware of how it's going to look with the
Okay,
update
so
of
we
the
don't
structural
need,
plan.
so you don't need to go through the whole plan then?
No, I mean, you
Okay,
had a
that's-
draft a couple weeks ago. You got another copy again. We weren't going to walk through the whole thing again, but it needed to be there for you to ask questions. But we moved this update up to make sure you still understood how it was going to be implemented. And again, to make you aware of that small tweak. That's the only thing that changed. We wanted to update you on what we got with, COVID-19 issues going on. That was the first part. And then again, how it would be implemented in that plan to make you aware.
That's fine. Okay.
So we
Thank
do
you.
have the health and safety plan as an attachment. Hopefully people have taken some time to review that. We have a motion and a second, so we do need to move to comments and questions. And I have, at the moment, I have Ms. McWhirter with her hand up. I heard Mr. Brophy as well.
I had mine up way back.
Okay, I will put Mrs. Deeroff then after Mr. Brophy. And then we'll proceed for now. And if anyone else wants to get in the queue, just let me know between speakers or use the raise hand feature, please.
So yes, I'm here. We've been through this health and safety plan many times, and we've had many times to review it online. And I am confident that even, that we have to remain flexible, but I'm confident with the administration's approach and what they've done, and I trust in them. So I'm good to go.
Ms. McWhirter, were you looking for a response? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. I have Mr. Brophy followed by Ms. Deeroff.
Okay, I'm going to make some statements on this. Hey, a few weeks ago, we were given a presentation on the district's return to school plan in August. It's referred to as the scaffold plan. I want to recognize that the administration put in numerous hours, intense work to come up with this plan, and it wasn't easy. They had to go through numerous expert opinions. If you talk to 10 experts, you got 7 opinions, and receiving no clear guidance from anywhere. So it made it really tough for them. They also had to fit published CDC guidelines, and also importantly, they had to stay within the resources of the district, which is also not easy. At that meeting, some of the board members, in an effort to perform our proper due diligence, asked what a plan for a full return would look like. We did this in order to determine that the effectiveness, the plus and minus, so to speak, of this proposed plan could be compared to something. What would the plan change away from kids being in the school full time? And the way to do that is what would a full return plan look like? Now, the administration didn't have a full plan for it, which is understandable because their entire resources were going to the scaffolding plan. So what we asked and what the administration did was put together a quick presentation that showed us the differences or what the pros and cons or what was good and bad for against the two plans. So with the, because there's a month left, you can't really do too much. So they did supply it, and we did get to see it, and that helped me a lot. It gave me, for that effort, it gave me the opportunity to look at what it looks like to go back full-time versus what it looks like to go back under the scaffold plan and actually perform a fair evaluation of the two. Now, there are some differences in the plan, but there are a lot of things common in the plan. There's a lot of things the administration just can't mitigate. It's just not possible. No matter how, how much they try or how much effort they put in, there's going to be places where kids are going to come together. There's going to be places where they're close, even though we were trying for the 6-foot distance, they're going to be mingling at some point in time. There's things the district has nothing they can do about that. But anything they could mitigate, I think they did. So in essence, I see a somewhat gain in health and wellness vector for the plan. But the academic achievement vector, the plan's a distant second. I want to make sure everybody understands that. However, this plan does have some distinct advantages that that are really have to be understood and are really important. First, this plan exists. There's no other plan currently in development that we can go back on. So we have one plan to go to present to get our kids back in school. It meets the requirements of the state so we can begin to reintroduce our students to the academic setting. And the administration has stated that it's far easier to drop back to virtual should our governor close and close or implement any school closures, which is also, they're two very important things for this plan. So tonight we're voting on, I have two options. Vote for one plan, I can vote no, or I can vote yes. I can reject it, or I can vote to accept it. There's no other options out there, in spite of what a lot of the public thought, that there was an option out there for an open, for a complete opening. It's never existed. So voting no to this plan, I'd be subjecting the students, parents, and teachers to staying in limbo again longer with no idea what happens next. That will keep our students sidelined and further hurt the academic development. So that's irresponsible and not something to consider. To vote yes, I'll be voting for a plan that I don't fully support. However, it allows us to move forward to the next steps in recovering from the present medical crisis. That being said, I will be voting for the students to go back and get into the educational system under this plan. However, I'm looking forward to hearing from the administration, not tonight, not even this month, of what a full return is going to look like when, how we're going to transition into it at some point in time. Because I am hopefully that there will be something, a vaccine or just a lower how many people get sick, so we can actually start going back to that and get the kids back into a really good academic setting. Thank you.
Mr. Foose, can you put me in the queue, please?
Yes. So I have Ms. Giroff next, and then you, Ms. Nyman.
Okay, I have heard from many of my district parents, and I know what they want. And unfortunately, that's not one of the plans presented. They want to go back to school full time. However, I'm a school director, and according to Pennsylvania School Board Association, we as school board directors are tasked to do three things. In essence, school boards have three functions: planning, setting policy, and evaluating results. And that's what I tried to do with this plan, putting that together with what various people have told me in emails, phone calls, and in person. And I won't be able to support what you're giving me, although I do want the children to get some type of education. I just can't support this plan. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Nyman, and I see Mr. Hemingway once again in the queue as well.
Okay, thank you. I have to kind of agree with Ms. Diroff. We are here for the safety and health of every student, but we're also here for the educational part of it, the emotional part of it, and the structure part of it. There are students that need that structure on a daily basis. I've heard from family friends, some who have 5 children, and they can't afford to be home. They have to work. They have to hire a babysitter if they're going to have this plan coming in. I don't think this administration did effectively come back with plans for us. They came back with basically one plan. And I cannot support that one plan. I've heard from too many neighbors, too many families, too many friends, and I have 3 grandchildren. They need that structure. So it's not just, I don't care about the kids. I do care about the kids. I have 3 grandchildren here. And we needed more plans instead of the one plan coming back. And yes, 5 of us voted to try to get a full-time thing in plan. But I don't think there was enough time to do it. None of the board was involved in the meetings and the discussion on this. And we should have been involved in that. We should have been able to give input into that way back in the beginning. So I will not be able to support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Okay, next I have Mr. Hemingway and Ms. Hogan.
And Mr. Foose, can I go after that, please?
Sure.
All right, Mr. Fruits, I guess I'm up. I was going to say, look, listen, I'm not totally crazy about the plan either, but we need to come up with a plan. We need to submit a plan on the idea that this is a plan that's in motion. All right, for everybody out, if we want to get personal, I'm a single dad. I have split custody. So that coming up in this spring, was it difficult while my daughter was home to do the online stuff? Very much so. Could I work? No. So I understand. I get it. But listen, we need to think about what is going to work and be flexible. All of us, perhaps we need to make some sacrifices. The community needs to make sacrifices for this school district. We have in the past, and we will continue. Is this plan perfect? Would I have liked to have more information? Of course, that's why I voted to go with the other four, that we wanted to get some more information. That's what we were elected to do, to be thorough. But it comes down to the point now that we're running out of time. We need to have some kind of direction. We need to trust those that we put in these positions to make the right decisions. All I ask is that we keep the board involved. We have a very active board. We have one that wants to have a say in the future of this district. But we're at the point now, parents want answers, the state's going to want answers, and we have to make a decision tonight. And I just ask that we have a solid board vote that at least get us started and trust those who are in the position that we put there to make the right decisions for our students. Me personally, I would like to see my daughter in school every day. But do I want her to be unprepared in case we are all cyber or all online? So I would like to see a plan that starts to emphasize preparing these kids in case the rules pulled out from under us. So is this the perfect plan? No, but it's a plan, and we need to act on it and give this administration some kind of direction so that they can make this plan better. I'm just asking that we have a solid vote within this board to set the message out that we are in control of the situation, we're very aware of the situation, and that we have confidence in those who are in the trenches, that are digging the holes. I'm a landscaper. I equate everything to digging holes. They're the ones digging the holes. We need to trust them and listen to them. All I ask is that we are a part of the process. That's all I have, Mr. Foos.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Foos. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Hemingway. The administration has worked very, very hard on this plan. Do I personally like every part of it? I do not, but I think it is the best compromise, knowing what we know about the needs of our district. I commend them for their hard work. I appreciate it. And I think it puts health and safety first, which is where it belongs. We need to keep our students, staff, our teachers healthy and safe as much as possible. And it also gives a great educational opportunities and options for parents. So it is very much appreciated, and I am going to vote for it. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Denon.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that I think that this totally is a lose-lose situation. I think we all knew that going into it. I really, really appreciate the hard work that the administration did, and I'm really glad that they were able to do all that work, because personally, I don't think I really have the expertise or enough knowledge to really be part of that. I'm governance now. I don't have children in school, but I too have talked to a lot of parents, and people have reached out. I've talked to teachers, healthcare workers, and there's no perfect solution. And I think that in the end, you have to do what is really best for your family and for your child. And everybody is in a different situation. Some people have families where they have an older parent living with them, so they're not willing to take a risk and put their child in school. Some families are two working parents, and it is near impossible to keep their children home, or they're just not really good with virtual learning. And I had shared with one parent, if I tried to put myself in this position, if my children were between 7 and 14 years old, which was probably the most difficult age time to have for boys. And I honestly thought about it, and I thought, what would I have done? And I probably would have said some of my children were going to go to school, and two were definitely going to be doing cyber, and two were definitely going to be in school. So it was going to be a split. So I think that nothing is going to be perfect, and all of us have the interest of our community and our children and the education of our children. And I think at this point, we've done the best we can do to offer something to everyone. And now it's really going to be up to each individual family to decide what is best for their family and what is best for the education of their child. And I think that we all can agree that every child learns differently. Every child is at a different level academically, socially, emotionally. And I think that it's a very individual decision. Now that we're going to have this plan, I think it now goes back to the parents of what is best for your child. So that's pretty much all I have to say. And I definitely will be supporting the plan.
So Mr. Hemingway's hand is raised. I don't know if that was left over or if that's a new hand raise.
No, it's a new hand raise. It's a simple question. It's to Dr. Bennon. Dr. Bennon, what is the most flexible and fair plan? If it's this one, then I vote yes.
This is the most flexible and fair plan because it is a plan developed by a lot of people working collaboratively. The association has worked with their team of people to review this. You have the 20+ people that were a part of it. It factored in parent input, staff input. It is the most flexible. Ms. Dennon's one comment about we actually tried to really meet the needs of a really diverse community and what it asked for. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. And at the end of the day, we're getting kids, all kids are having access to in-person. All kids are having access. We're absolutely trying to implement as many of the mitigation strategies as possible. We're trying to meet that piece of it, which is about the social emotional aspect. But again, I'm going to say, kids are going to come back and see a very different school too. So when they come back, it is not going to be what they thought it was if parents need to really prepare them. And additionally, the health and safety plan guidelines specifically say that we have to be able to have a plan that is fluid, that allows us to move back and forth between, at the time, red, yellow, and green. Adding the piece where you had a separate team working, a virtual team working, independent, simultaneously, I should say, while we were trying to craft a plan to develop that piece. Because honestly, I'll be surprised unless something changed dramatically. I'm waiting for a decree from the state to say that we're going to go virtual. And it's going to be taken out of our hands if something doesn't change. I'll be shocked if that doesn't happen right now. And we're trying to build capacity to be able to turn on a dime and do that also. This, with the new virtual option, also allows a parent to individually say, I prefer my child stay home and still have access to the teacher virtually, while others get to come in. And it may actually help decrease our class sizes. It has a lot of pieces to it, with a lot of people's voices working very hard. And quite honestly, this has been a difficult thing across the state, where everything that we're going through now is played out in many board meetings right now with the vote because of the mixed feelings of so many people. But at the end of the day, schools can't be all things to all people. We know right now that we're escalating and increasing with positive COVID-19 cases. And I'm going to speak personally. My daughter's district came out with in or out, no mixture of this, nothing in between. That was all they gave us. But right now, with the numbers I see, I would not put my own children full-time.
Right.
My daughter would not be in school full-time every day, period.
I appreciate that, Dr. Bennett, and with your answer, the flexibility is what I think is huge, and not a lot is what we have to give confidence in you guys. I would hope that my motion stands. Thank you.
Mr. Fuchs, I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Updegrove.
Well, I think Dr. Bedden and his team did an excellent job on coming up with the scaffolding plan. And I will be voting for it because we have to move on. We have to get something going. Thank you.
All right. I apologize. I know people want to move on to a vote. I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to try to touch on real quick before we move to a vote. First was regarding, there was a discussion earlier about seats in the classroom, and if we have a certain number of people that opt for virtual or cyber charter, and that changes the numbers within the building. I was wondering if this is similar to the transportation issue where somebody might opt to not use the bus, but we still need to reserve that seat in the event that they change their mind at some point during the school year. So as far as the parents opting between options during the school year, is that something that we need to be prepared for? And does that limit our ability to move people around?
Mr. Fuchs, we are really trying to limit, in the survey itself, we're asking for a commitment. It's really difficult to say commitment over time because as we have learned that flexibility is a key scenario and people's lives can change in a huge way. But we're asking for some sort of at least longer than short-term commitment to the transportation scenario as well as the instructional scenario, just because we need to plan accordingly.
Thank you for that. And I was also curious regarding some of the, since we were on the health and safety plan, some of the cleaning protocols, it does go into detail. I think when I search for cleaning, the word cleaning comes up about 40 times throughout the protocol. However, it discusses CDC guidelines and it links to those for people that are interested in reviewing some of that. But as far as if parents just wanted to know what products are being used, what chemicals there are, is there a place that they can find that? Or is that something that we could place somewhere that's easy to find on our website?
Mr. Fuchs, I know that Mr. Drescher has not changed his cleaning products as they have already been established to kill, and Mr. Drescher can jump in, whatever viruses would have been on surfaces prior to COVID. I think the biggest change is in the event that if there was a case and the deep cleaning that would need to go take place. So he would then have to post that as part of our preventive maintenance, I guess it is, and being able to communicate that just like we do when we have pest control.
And I was just curious, and this might be getting a little too in the weeds, I apologize ahead of time. The actual cleaning protocol that is followed through on, what type of oversight and documentation will there be assuring? I assume that there will be some way that we're demonstrating that that's getting done.
Mr. Drescher has been tasked directly from me to make sure that he develops a protocol and procedure to make sure that his custodians are signing off on the protocol and procedures on a regular basis, so that we have a record of what was done in a protocol and procedure. Obviously, he can't physically be there every point in time, but we still want some mechanism that we can actually go back and look at what was and what wasn't done based on here's what we expect to be done in the buildings. And when you finish it, here's a process that he can have a record of what was actually done each day, and an assurance that they're following the cleaning procedures that we're asking to be put in place.
If I can add to that, Dr. Bedden, in the next 2 days here, we're going to be going through a training process with all the custodians, and they're all going to be shown exactly what's expected, so that we're doing things consistently throughout the district, and we're not doing something different at Cobrookdale versus Boyertown Elementary. I'm physically going to go out there and show them, along with Lee Horn, in the event I'm not able to make it here for whatever reason. Lee is also aware of the protocols that we're going to set in place so that we're consistent across the entire district.
Great. That's good to hear. Thank you. And then this is less of a question, more of a suggestion. The virtual model, I think it might be good at some point to, I don't know if this was already planned, to just have some way of demonstrating for parents what that might look like. If a teacher would be willing to demonstrate that, publish some type of video, so that parents are aware of how that might work for them at home with their students. But that being said, I do want to comment that this plan has taken shape over time with a lot of people being involved, while there are a lot of moving parts that they're trying to assess. And I appreciate all the work that has gone into it. Things that I wrote down are things like balanced, thoughtful, and compromise, because it absolutely is a compromise. And I know that it was touched on during the previous presentation, things like the structure that we know kids need, the social and emotional needs that they have, and even something like hunger, that we're providing meals to students who may otherwise not get them. I think those are very valid concerns, but under the current circumstances, we have to really adapt and be flexible. And I do believe that the people, administration, and the professionals in this district will find ways to make sure that those things are addressed to the best of our capabilities. And I tend to lean more toward the idea of the virtual being the safer route. So that's why I say I think this is a good compromise, and it really gives people options. It gives parents in this district options, and I really appreciate that's being provided. So with that, I really think I think we're ready for a vote, unless anyone has any last comments. All right, seeing none or hearing none at this time, we'll move to the vote.
Dr. Bedden, just to be clear, would you like to read what the motion is?
The motion that was says that the Board of School Directors approves the health and safety plan as presented, subject to granting authorization to the district administration to make reasonable modifications to the plan to reflect changing safety and educational needs and requirements in order to proceed with the reopening for the 2020-2021 school year.
Okay. I would also like the record to reflect that Mr. Updegrove did join the meeting as a panelist at 8:03. So now for the vote. Mrs. Deeroff.
No.
Mrs. Hogan.
Yes.
Mrs. Denon.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman.
No.
Mrs. McWhirter.
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway.
Yes.
Mr. Foose.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-2.
All right. It's 10:19 and we still have plenty on our agenda. So we will move next to the consent agenda.
Mr. President, you have, for the sake of time, the consent agenda has item 10A. I do want to highlight that you received specifically what tweak was made based on new guidance. So we're not going through the whole thing again, but we highlighted for you what the change was so you didn't have to read the whole document again. Items 10A through 10N, we're asking for your approval of the consent agenda.
Denon moves.
Hogan seconds.
We have Ms. Denon with a motion and Ms. Hogan with a second. And as this is the consent agenda, we will move right to the vote.
Mrs. Deeroff? Mrs. Deeroff?
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan?
Yes.
Mrs. Denon?
Yes.
Mr. Brophy?
Yes.
Ms. Nyman?
Yes.
Mrs. McWhirter?
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove?
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway?
Yes.
Mr. Foose?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Itemized agenda, item 11A is executive security services and tactical development and a BASD contract. This is not a new service in the district. It's a different provider of the services within the district. So the administration asked that the board of directors approve the contract with executive security services and tactical development, and with BASD as presented. The contract was reviewed by our solicitor.
Have a motion for this item.
McWhorter moves.
Hogan seconds.
Order with the motion and Ms. Hogan seconding. Are there any comments or questions on the security services? All right, we will move on to the vote.
Mrs. Deeroff?
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan?
Yes.
Mrs. Denon?
Yes.
Mr. Brophy?
Yes.
Ms. Nyman?
Yes.
Mrs. McWhirter?
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove?
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway?
Yes.
Mr. Foose?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Item number 11B is the approval of separation agreement. The administration recommends the Board of School Directors approve the separation agreement between employee 5353 and the Boyertown Area School District effective July 17, 2020. There was a question that was answered regarding this issue. This was reviewed and developed by the solicitor as the most appropriate way to handle this situation.
Hogan moves.
Deeroff
Denon.
seconds.
Okay, we have Ms. Hogan with a motion and Ms. Deeroff with a second. Any comments or questions on this item? Okay, we'll move to a vote.
Mrs. Deeroff?
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan?
Yes.
Mrs. Denon?
Yes.
Mr. Brophy?
Yes.
Ms. Nyman?
Yes.
Mrs. McWhirter?
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove?
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway?
Yes.
Mr. Foose?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Item 11C was moved over from the consent agenda for the nurse supervisor position. The administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approve the nurse supervisor position as presented.
McWhorter moves.
Hogan
Jen.
seconds.
I have Ms. McWhorter with the motion, and I believe Ms. Hogan was first in with the second. Comments and questions on the nurse supervisor position. I believe, was that Mrs. Deeroff that said she had one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please go ahead.
I had asked this question before, and the answer I got wasn't exactly an answer, so I went back and checked the information they gave me. The description of the position that I was told that was given to us July 10th, also, I went and checked, which is different than the description on this one. The problem I have is the description says, will I pull it up, that they would get no child load, caseload. And that wasn't in the original one we got, but I'm concerned with that because in the event somebody would be out, especially right now with the COVID, they would be out for a month or two, that we would have a problem then with the caseload of that nurse that could be out. And there must have been a reason why it was added the second time we got the description.
I do know that that question was asked, and I put some notes about the caseload and that Mrs. Nyman asked, and Mrs. Torsia answered about the requirement of the number of caseloads. You cannot assign this person a caseload to have direct supervision and do this job, because then they would not be doing and meeting their standards for the state requirement. What ultimately was asked after that question, when Mr. Torsia replied, was about whether the person would fill in when necessary. And Ms. Torsia, Ms. Nyman said the person could not stay within the nurse department at a smaller school. And then after COVID-19, we still need a position. The person would jump in and there if needed. Ms. Torsia said, no, due to the responsibilities of the position, too much responsibility at the school level. But yes, due to medical condition and lingering effects, they would still need the position and ongoing nursing responsibilities. Yes, they would fill in, but they would be our last resort to use a person, but yes, they will be used. That is also a part of the video at 49:02, I believe, in the video. Excuse me, Ms. Nyman asked a question at 42 minutes and 6 seconds to Ms. Torsia. But Ms. Torsia did speak to, if you could jump in, about the caseload requirement and the ratio, why you said that was the case, they could not carry a caseload. Ms. Torsia?
Yes. Mrs. Europe, the reason is that they would then be responsible for making sure that they are within the buildings that would be reflective of the caseload that they were carrying. So it does not exclude them from coverage in the event that we would need someone and did not have anyone else to do that. But it does not put a requirement on this certified school nurse to do the reporting that is required at the building level when you are a certified school nurse that's 1 to the 1,500 students that you would be covering.
I wasn't trying to give her more work. That wasn't my question. I was concerned why it changed.
Yeah, that's why, just to make it understood that it was not a caseload bearing position, but there certainly would be the expectation that in the event that we had a need for coverage and we did not have any, that this person would make sure that we had the health coverage that was necessary.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, are there any other comments or questions on this item? Okay, let's move to the vote then.
Mrs. Deeroff,
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan,
Yes.
Mrs. Denon,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Ms. Nyman,
Yes.
Mrs. McWhorter,
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Mr. Foose.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Item number 11D is the personnel items. The Administration presents for board approval the following personnel actions. On the professional side, resignations, 3 employees and 1 classified. For appointment, 2 employees and 1 substitute. You have a change in status of 1 supportive supervisory personnel and change in status 4 professional and 1 classified employee. The administration recommends the approval of the personnel items as presented.
Hogan motions.
McWhorter, second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions on these personnel items?
This is, Mr. President, where that item that Mr. Brophy may have had a question about should be asked. So I want to make sure he doesn't miss it unless he doesn't have a question anymore.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, we will then proceed to the vote.
Mrs. Deeroff,
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan,
Yes.
Mrs. Denon,
Yes.
Mr. Brophy,
Yes.
Ms. Nyman,
Yes.
Mrs. McWhorter,
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove,
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Mr. Foose.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Yeah,
Mr.
that can-
President,
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sorry.
you do have a old business item on the agenda. This was held with some more review and clarification. Immediately after the last meeting, of course, we got the answer to one question about what happens with the PIAA that was asked by the board. They declared that they would be operating until told otherwise. And then you also got language that was added, I believe, by the attorney, specifying what they said in person to the board, that should a season be canceled, the contract would be prorated to address that issue. Again, this is a replacement of an old service model. The previous provider no longer is providing that service, and then the other potential provider did not respond to, when asked for a quote, to provide services because they weren't sure whether they would be providing a service this coming fall also. Mr. Palladino is here. I did respond to a question to the board from another board member that this makes sure that we still have the same level, at least physical present. I can't speak to the quality of the 2 agencies, but at least coverage for our teams as we've had in the past with additional athletic training services that have always been provided. Mr. Palladino, are you here?
Yes, sir.
So this was old business. And again, PIAA immediately after our meeting declared that they would be in season until told otherwise. And the question that was brought up about if the season is canceled, how that would be happened, I believe was added in with some contract language by Mr. Sultanic to put it in writing.
Yes, that is correct.
So the administration is recommending that the board approve the contract with St. Louis University Health Network as presented. And again, the contract was reviewed by the solicitor and additional language added based on the board's question the last time this was presented.
Hogan motions.
Updegrove, seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have comments or questions on this item that we're bringing back?
Okay, I have a question there, Brandon.
Yep, go ahead.
This is the term on this is 5 years. Is that correct? When I remember.
Correct.
It seems long. I understand that nobody wants a one-year contract because it's not worth their while to take that because of all the setup and initial costs. I thought we talked to them about a 3-year contract at the last meeting. Why did we decide on 5 versus 3? Just a question.
I'm going to speak to what I remember. I remember the question being asked about the terms, and I remember him responding that the other things that they add into it, they can't get the return on all the other stuff they do for it. That's why they asked for the 5-year. Mr. Palladino, do you have, I mean, I remember that meeting conversation. I think Mr. Brophy's now asking for, after that meeting, was there any more dialogue about that request that I can't speak to?
Yes.
I spoke with Dr. Hoff, and the reason, at length about the difference between a 3 plus a 2 and a 5. The big difference is if we go with the 5-year, first thing, our rate is locked in for those 5 years. Secondly is the sponsorships and the other donations that they give you. We wouldn't get that if we did a 3 and a 2. We would get it only if we did a 5. And two of the big points that I was discussing with him is one of the things they do is they donate AEDs to your training staff, which we definitely helps us out because we still are understaffed in our athletic training department covering our 3 buildings when we're full go. So we felt that being that it did lock our rate in, it's a service. As long as we have athletics, we need it. And I felt that, talking to other schools who utilize St. Luke's, everybody came back with the relationships were great. They go above and beyond to help you. Governor Wolf did just sign some new legislature about cardiac training for coaches, where they will step in and they can help us deliver that to our coaches and staff. They are willing to help us out with some other things like our impact testing if we go with the 5-year term with them, standing orders and physician coverage for football games, and the standing orders for our trainers, which help them with group therapy and things like that. That is usually a separate cost for us, and that's all rolled into our contract with them. So we're getting a lot more than what we had last year for the cost. So that's why I'm recommending going with the 5-year, just so big time we can lock that rate in, because if we don't, that number will go up. So we're looking pretty much to be fiscally responsible with that rate lock.
Okay. So Mr. Palladino, you're confident enough in their level of service that we don't expect any problems, and we have a monetary component where we have an incentive to go 5 years, and that's why we're taking this. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay,
thank you.
I see Ms. Denon with her hand up. I did want to jump in real quick, though, if you don't mind. I had a question just as far as if you enter into the 5-year, what is our ability to, since it is we're moving to a new provider with this, what's our ability to get out if a year or 2 in we decide this just isn't the level of quality we would like?
There are terms in the contract. It's financial. There's a cancellation fee, and some of the donation money that if they would happen to give us, we would have to give some of that money back if we don't stay the full term. Honestly, from all the other schools I've spoken to, and we have had St. Luke's at our facilities before when we're hosting PIAA events, I haven't had an issue with them. If they do decrease their coverage, then we're not held liable for that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Denon.
Yes, thank you. Just looking at this, I mean, basically, it's about $8,000 more per year. So over 5 years, you're looking at $40,000. But it seems like the amount of cash donations over the 5 years, and then cash sponsoring of different events and different things, that's actually valued at more. So I would be supportive of it. Originally, I thought the same thing. Let's not go with 5 years, but looking at the numbers, it makes sense to do that.
Yeah, similarly, looking at the breakdown of the different services they provide, and that we're able to get that with one entity instead of spreading it out over several, I think certainly simplifies things. And St. Luke's has a pretty stellar reputation. So I think that would be a good relationship to have with them. Are there any other comments or questions? All right, let's move to a vote then.
Mrs. Deeroff.
Yes.
Mrs. Hogan.
Yes.
Mrs. Denon.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman. Ms. Nyman?
Is she unable to unmute herself?
I think she just did. Ms. Nyman, how do you vote?
I vote yes, but I did not unmute myself. I have no control over the controls.
Mrs. McWhorter?
Yes.
Mr. Updegrove?
Yes.
Mr. Hemingway?
Yes.
Mr. Foose?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
All right, the next, that concludes all of our voting items for this evening. Our next agenda topic is public comment period number 2. And I received notification earlier that we had 2 people signed up. So if those 2 people are still wishing to speak, I have first Mr. John Amy.
Let me try to find him. There he is. Mr. Amy, you can, there you go.
Okay. In the interest of time, because it's kind of late, and for everyone to save everyone's time, I'm going to send my comment along in an email address and save everybody the trouble.
Right.
So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that consideration at this late hour. Next, we have Mr. Ralph Shars, who was wishing to speak.
Try to find him. Mr. Shar? Yep.
Yes, can everybody hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. All right. First of all, I want to send my appreciation to Dr. Bedden and his team on the development of the, let's call it, COVID opening plan. It's a great plan. I think it allows for the flexibility that we need in a fluid environment. But of course, no one knows how the COVID situation will develop. I am disappointed, flustered, and I guess borderline appalled that some of the board members didn't even understand the motion today, or the first motion that was at hand. I mean, we're all listening to the same thing, and you are the leadership of our school district. And then, the structure for kids, would you have parents worry about structure for kids, or quarantine, you have a family member in the hospital or the ICU or worse? Same thing with the coverage. Would you rather worry as a parent about coverage for kids, or having to quarantine a kid or your family, or have family members in the hospital, the ICU or worse? Then it also rings kind of hollow when I hear from a board member, oh, I wish I would have gotten involved earlier. A board commitment is not a Tuesday, the last Tuesday evening of the month. As a board member, you can get involved more proactively. At least today's meeting was more civil than meetings in the past. But also we are heading towards another revolving door because of the board, and our senior leadership. We have new board members, but we're still one of the most difficult school districts in the entire state, or actually along the Eastern Seaboard. If this were a for-profit business, you know, it would be a business that's in absolute chaos. It would be dysfunctional, ineffective, and it would be struggling for survival. I'm just totally frustrated with the board and some of the egos on the board. And last, I want to finish on a positive note. You know, of course, you know, a lot of people know that, you know, Dr. Bedden is doing a great job. I have the utmost respect for him, for his dedication to the students in our district, to the staff in our district. And it would be an absolute shame if we were to lose that leadership. That leadership would be not easy to fill because we are known as a very tough district with a very tough board. And I hope and pray that Dr. Bedden stays with the district. And if Dr. Bedden decides to move on, and I don't think anybody could really blame him, any school district would be blessed and lucky to have someone of Dr. Bedden's caliber. And I just, losing that leadership, potentially losing that leadership in such a crucial time would be absolutely devastating to our district, and we would not be able to get an equivalent replacement or anywhere near that. Thank you, Dr. Bedden.
That concludes our public comment period for this evening. Our next item is board comment. Do any of our board members want to provide comment at this time? Switching over, it looks like Ms. Hogan's hand is up.
Yeah, I have a quick comment. I'm going to keep it brief. I just want to say that I've seen some commentary leveled at members of this board and people that work on our staff, and just unkind language, dehumanizing language. And where I believe the public officials sign up for this job and that public criticism comes along with that, our staff are not public officials, they're not elected. And I think, and I would hope that moving forward, when people are making comments, they're respectful. Like I said, the dehumanizing language is appalling. It makes me literally ill, and it makes me ashamed of our community in a way, not as a whole, but as those people who are willing to say such hurtful, ignorant, terrible things about other human beings. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I saw a hand go up and go back down. So is anybody else wishing to get in the queue? All right, I'd like to make one last comment. I just want to thank the administration. I want to thank my colleagues. Whatever the process was to get us here, I believe that we finally reached a point of providing some clear direction. We voted on it, it's official. And I really hope that they are able to implement the absolute best that they can under the circumstances. I think that we have a lot of trust and faith in the job that they're doing. We know that they care deeply about the children in this district and providing them with a quality education. And I really look forward to seeing how they're able to carry that out. And I certainly wish them the best. We'll do what we can to hold them accountable, but I have a great deal of faith in what they're doing, and I want to thank my colleagues again for a good conversation and this evening. And I think that's it. We can conclude with upcoming meeting dates. I believe our next meeting is August 4th. All of our meetings are listed on the website, so please go ahead and check that. And with that, I'd like to see if there is a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Hemingway makes the motion, or second, whatever you decide.
All right, I'm gonna go Mr. Hemingway with the motion. I believe Mr. Brophy had the second.
That's works.
So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.